Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of what if Deku had to defy mediocrity to survive? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Sorry kid, it's not gonna happen. You don't have a quirk. No way you can be a hero like that. Dr. Tsubasa said, breaking the news to the family in front of him bluntly. There must be a mistake. My family has had quirks for at least 5 generations now, and Hisashi said that his family is the same. How can our son be quirkless? Inko Midoriya, mother of Izuku Midoriya, exclaimed in indignation. Look here at this x-ray. You see that double toe joint there? That's a marker of quirklessness. Out of everyone on the planet, it's 1,000,000,000 to 1 odds that your son has a quirk and the toe joint. I'm not a betting man, so I wouldn't put any faith in your son beating the odds. Dr. Tsubasa said in a callous manner, not caring one iota about the harm his words may cause. Izuku, sitting in front of his family doctor and with his mother behind him, felt something inside of himself break. He felt his dreams shatter into 1,000,000 pieces. All he ever wanted to be was a hero, like All Might, but without a quirk would that ever happen? The drive home was a blur for Izuku. He couldn't tell you anything about it even if you gave him all day. Once his mother and him got into their small 2-bedroom apartment, however, Izuku asked one question, and maybe, just maybe, if he had received a different answer, a lot of future pain could have been avoided. Mom? Can I be a hero like All Might? I just want to make people smile, he said with a teary look towards his mother. I'm so sorry, Izuku. I'm so sorry, his mother told him, hugging him tight and staining his shirt with her tears alongside his own. That's not what I wanted you to say, that's not what I wanted you to say at all. Izuku Midoriya was only 4 years old when he learned a cruel truth about this world. That all men were not created equal. Izuku was nervous about seeing Bakugo Katsuki, Kaken, at the park today. He'd have to tell him about being quirkless. How would they be the best heroes together now? Kaken wouldn't leave him behind, right? He wouldn't, right? Hey Kaken, Izuku said to his ashy blonde-haired friend, feeling quite nervous about what Kaken asked him in lieu of a greeting. Oi, Deku, what lame quirk do you have? You went to the doctor to find out, right? The brash and aggressive boy exclaimed. His statement incidentally grabbing the attention of the other children around them. Izuku just mumbled incoherently in response. What was that, Deku? Bakugo inquired, more aggressively than before. I am quirkless, Izuku stammered out despondently. Eh? How are you supposed to be a hero like me if you're quirkless? Bakugo shouted out, alerting all the other children surrounding them of Izuku's shame. I see Kinsil Triway alright, Izuku stuttered out as he ducked his head to stare down at his feet. Teach, let's just go play somewhere fun like the forest. Bakugo instructed the small forming group around himself and Izuku, disregarding the former question in its entirety. The group trekked out into the woods, leading to a small river within a rocky clearing. Taking the time to walk over a log that created a natural bridge to the other side of the clearing, Bakugo missteps and accidentally falls onto the river below. Here, let me help you get up, Izuku proclaims while holding out a hand to help his friend get up, a beaming smile on his face. I don't want your help, useless Deku, Bakugo snarled with thinly veiled vitriol. Unfortunately, this is yet another moment that could have been avoided. Could have been changed. Could have been saved. However, that was not to be in this story. As yet another domino fell into place. This was not the tale of a boy who would become a great hero. Because a hero could not be useless. Everything had changed after that day by the river. Kaken had become meaner, more arrogant, and dare Izuku say, cruel. Kaken had started to use his quirk, explosion, on people that he dubbed as lesser or weaker than himself. Izuku would step in to try and stop this, but that would almost always result in Izuku taking the brunt of the beating instead. At least the others usually get out afterwards without any more injuries. Thought Izuku, laying in the dirt, staring up at the sky with tears in his eyes after the latest beating Kaken gave him. A shadow loomed over Izuku's body, blocking out his view of the sky above. It was Tsubasa, the grandson of Izuku's family doctor. "Deku, what are you doing laying down in the dirt?" the boy questioned, not unkindly yet also not in a friendly manner. Tsubasa was one of the few people to not bully Izuku about his quirklessness, but he wouldn't be caught dead hanging out with the boy in fear of being socially isolated himself. "Kaken," Izuku rasped out in reply, nothing else needing to be said between the two boys. Tsubasa sat around in the empty clearing, humming a wordless tune that Izuku couldn't place the melody of for the life of him, but it was nice. For Izuku, this was a single bastion of friendship, well, maybe not that, but companionship. Izuku didn't really have friends exactly. For Tsubasa, this was just a single nice thing he could do for someone that needed it. A weight off of his consciousness. That's all. After a while, the two boys got up and went their separate ways, not a word said between them. That's how it was. That's how it always will be. A quirked and quirkless can't be friends after all. A quirkless can't be anything in this world. It's been an entire year now since Izuku got his quirkless diagnosis. An entire year of dealing with Katsuki's insults and hatred. An entire year of effectively being alone besides the small talks with Tsubasa. Izuku was starting to feel less and less like the energetic child he was supposed to be. He felt alone and discarded. It hurt not having anyone to call a friend. However, he was not going to mope around all day about it. He had to head out for his first day of elementary school. Hopefully it would be better there, right? It was not better. It wasn't better at all. Izuku thought being beaten up a bit and left alone was bad, but school was even worse somehow. School left him feeling even more alone, but without the ability to leave. He was stuck with no one but himself and his thoughts. After all, no one would want to talk with the quirkless kid. He might accidentally infect them with his uselessness. At least Izuku still had his dreams. Dreams that he could be a hero. That he could be worth something. It isn't a crime to dream after all, everyone can dream, All Might said so himself. That afternoon they had their first ever recess, something that Izuku was looking forward to, at least in part because he had an excuse to just enjoy the outside air and maybe relax a bit. He should have known that life would never let him relax without a price. Time to play, heroes versus villains. Bakugo exclaimed aloud for all the other kids on the playground to hear. Fear briefly grips Izuku's heart. He knows what's coming next. I get to be the #1 hero while the rest of you are my lackeys. Bakugo shouted out towards everyone playing with him. Deku can be the villain. The cruel boy intones out with a smirk, causing the fear Izuku felt mere moments before to explode in his tiny heart, forcing him to fall flat on his backside and try to inch away from the oncoming violence. He was not successful in the slightest, as the bruises on his body would attest to that fact. He also wouldn't succeed the next handful of times the game was played. Eventually, the game evolved into a new one called Deku Hunting. Izuku was not a fan of this game in the slightest. This trend would become Izuku's new life in school for the foreseeable future. Every moment a social pariah until someone seeked to harm him. He almost wished that people just forgot he existed. It might just be easier after all to be ignored than outright hated. The year seemed to just get more difficult over time for Izuku. At least academically he did fine. Maybe he would have been noticed more if he wasn't overshadowed by his peers' flashy quirks and appearances. Sometimes he wished that he was even more bland looking. Maybe they'd glance right past and finally leave him alone for a day. Thankfully he still had the occasional moment with Tsubasa, despite how few and far between those moments seemed to become now. He wouldn't dare wish for the boy to be associated with him. He wanted friendship, but not at the cost of someone else. He was self-sacrificing like that. He was also very lonely like that, but he'd never admit it out loud. That was how Izuku Midoriya's first year of school went. Alone, hurt, and just wanting someone, anyone, to reach out a hand and tell him his dreams were possible. Unfortunately for this young man, that was not his part to play in this story. Tsubasa abruptly left halfway through the next school year, and for the first real time since his quirkless diagnosis, Izuku was completely alone. He had no one at this school that he would consider even an acquaintance. All he had left was his quirk analysis notebooks and his mind. Bakugo somehow managed to be even worse than before. He'd start targeting Izuku with his quirk even more often, leaving light burns and singe marks on his flesh. Izuku was starting to become exhausted, smiling less and less every day. He'd already lost everything at this point. He didn't have a quirk. He didn't have a mother that believed in his dream. He didn't have his old best friend anymore. And now he didn't have the only sort of friend he'd had since his diagnosis. It just wasn't fair. Bakugo had everything he needed. A strong quirk, a body built to handle said quirk. Wait, how did Bakugo's body even handle his quirk? Izuku asked himself, this train of thought derailing his previous mental spiral. He couldn't get that question out of his head. He had to know the answer. He just had to know. He booted up the family computer, which opened up with the video of All Might that Izuku had watched religiously for the last 3 years. Izuku made a major decision at that moment. One that would change his future irrevocably. He closed the tab for the video and typed a singular question in the search bar in front of him, not knowing what answers and additional questions this would lead him to. What do quirks do to your body? Izuku had spent all of the last afternoon poring over the family computer, not finding a single answer to his question, just ending up with even more somehow. It was frustrating to the young boy. He only wanted some answers. How hard was that? Izuku let out an unexpected grunt at the situation, his anger bubbling outwards slightly. He was surprised at this. It was not like him to get angry in that way, let alone show it. Maybe Bakugo's influence was getting to him after all this time. Why is it always Bakugo that he obsesses over so much? Is it his strong quirk? His strong personality? His ability to always win? Izuku didn't have the answers at this time. He didn't have the answers to a lot of things at this time. That was what annoyed Izuku Midoriya so much at this time. He just had to get the answers and things would fall into place. Izuku opened his latest notebook that he had been writing in, Heroic Analysis for the Future Volume 2, and flipped to Bakugo's updated page in it. There, he had Bakugo's quirk analyzed, Explosion, in all of its glory. Bakugo could make explosions in his hands using sweat. It was a simple yet powerful quirk, one strong enough for Izuku to believe that Bakugo could genuinely become the next #1 hero. Wait, how does he not hurt himself whenever he explodes? Izuku asked himself in a moment of clarity. The young boy then typed a second question into the search bar on the computer. How does your body protect itself from your quirk? This search, unlike the previous one, bore more fruit in terms of results. Quirk adaptations, mutant-type quirks changing their entire biology, even emitter types having new functions within their bodies. Quirks didn't just give you new abilities, but changed your body as well. Fire quirk users, for example, most often had a resistance to higher heats apparently. So how does Bakugo resist explosions? Izuku had questioned himself. Would he just resist explosions? Wait, but how would that make sense? Maybe he only resists parts of explosions? But how would he dash? Izuku was broken out of his series of questions by his mother lightly knocking on his door. Izuku, honey, it's time for dinner. I made katsudon, your favorite. Inko Midoriya calmly announced to her son, seeing him earlier on the computer, but not watching All Might like he usually does. It was odd from her perspective, seeing her little boy ask so many questions and even posing theories like the little genius he was. He would make a good scientist. She mused in her mind. It was just a shame that in this quirked world, the quirkless really weren't accepted anywhere. Izuku was lucky enough to still have his mother in his life at all. Dinner was an energetic affair. Today, with Izuku happily talking about the things he had read about on the computer, Inko even being floored once or twice about the things her son was talking about. She was a nurse, not a biologist after all. Either way, she was just happy that her son found something he was passionate about besides heroics. Because thinking of that look on his face when he was diagnosed as quirkless still occasionally kept her up at night. A part of her wished that she gave him a different answer that day, but another part of her, one she'd never admit to aloud, was somewhat glad that he wouldn't become a hero. Call her selfish all you want, she didn't want her baby boy to put his life on the line every day. All she has to do is make her son give up his dream to keep him safe. Simple, right? Inko Midoriya feels that she's failed as a parent sometimes. Why don't you continue with your research in your room while I finish up with these dishes? Inko asked her son, trying to take her mind off her previous mental spiral. There were only two things on Izuku's mind after having dinner with his mother: figuring out how Bakugo resists his quirk, and figuring out why he couldn't get the idea of quirk adaptations out of his mind. Something about the idea of adaptations just clicked in Izuku's brain, like a missing puzzle piece slotting into place. He just had to figure out why. First things first, figuring out how Bakugo resists his quirk. Maybe that will help him find some answers to the second question too. From what Izuku knew and unfortunately had experience with when it came to explosions, he knew they were hot, loud, and fast. He knew what it was like to be on the brunt of one, more than most. So, Izuku knew what Bakugo had to adapt to then. The heat. The noise. The kitback. Bakugo's body had to have resistance to these parts of an explosion to be able to use his quirks safely at all. Izuku certainly didn't have a resistance to them, as the marks on his body could attest. Bakugo's quirk wasn't a weak one, unlike the little sparks it had once been 2 years ago when his quirk first appeared. Izuku had written all of this down in his notebook. His little treasure trove of internal thoughts, observations, and dreams. He wrote about the exact way that Bakugo's hands would tense in the moments before his quirk would activate. The way that Bakugo's shoulders would briefly brace in preparation for the explosion. Even the way that Bakugo's hands seemed more rough than any other part of his body, as if it was always meant to, in order to handle the heat and force of his quirk. Something seemed to click in Izuku's head. A sense that he never had before. What? No, that wasn't the whole truth. This was something that he never knew he had. A part of him, like his hands, ears, eyes, and mouth. This was another sense entirely. He could feel a tingling throughout his body, every cell screaming at him that he could and should use them. He didn't exactly know. But he could feel them. He could feel the way that every part of his body lit up like he was under Bakugo's explosions, but unlike those times, there was no pain, just purpose and clarity. Izuku gave himself completely to the feeling this new sense gave him. He let it run its course and guide him. And within himself, he felt the change that was taking place. He could feel himself breathe easier, feel the way the muscles in his arms shook with newfound power, and felt the way his hands, now more calloused and rough in texture, flexed with a newly ingrained instinct. Izuku now felt like he was on top of the world, able to stand up there with the greatest and still come out on top. He felt like he was better than everyone else. Then, like a puppet with its strings cut, Izuku's body lost the strength coursing through him. Relinquished back into the furthest corner of his mind. Still there. Still watching. Still waiting. Izuku could feel the presence within his mind, tantalizingly close, yet just barely out of reach. Izuku scrambled to write all of this down in his notebook, mumbles flowing freely from his mouth in wild abandon. He had to write about everything he just experienced. Izuku Midoriya never did notice until much later that once he started filling out Bakugo's entry in his notebook that much of the observations and anecdotes were formed from a seemingly first-hand account. Almost as if the writer knew the person in question better than they knew themselves. That night, as Izuku Midoriya was tossing and turning in his sleep, he had a dream about one Katsuki Bakugo. Unlike most dreams of the blonde-haired boy, in which Izuku dreamt of the pain inflicted upon him, this dream had Izuku in a void, surrounded on all sides by a thick black mist. The only other person within this space being a slightly translucent version of Bakugo. This facsimile of the boy turning to face Izuku with an expressionless gaze. Staring, pondering, but never moving. Never taking a single step forward. Never being able to move. Because this wasn't real, at least, not yet. This world of Izuku's was going to shatter the lines between dreams and reality. Between dreams and nightmares. Nito Monoma was a kind-hearted young boy that just wanted to do the right thing. Not out of obligation, but out of responsibility. It was your responsibility to do the right thing after all, right? At least, that's what his mom had always told him. Do the right thing, Nito. Because if you won't, who will? She would always say, as if placing all these expectations on him wasn't a massive burden. He'd do it anyway though, not because his mom told him to, but because it just made sense to the young boy. Why would he sit back while bad people were doing bad things? He wasn't a villain, after all. He was just Nito Monoma. A child with a copy quirk. No individuality to speak of. Nothing that makes him unique in this world. Just a side character in a world of main characters. Nito was uncertain how he felt about his quirk. He certainly enjoyed using it, getting to play around with every exciting quirk he saw. It was a gift for the budding quirk analyst. What made Nito dislike his quirk, however, is how other people viewed it, such as his classmates for the last 2 years. They made him feel conflicted about his quirk. Nito didn't like his classmates. Actually, scratch that, he had no love for them in any way. They were loud, arrogant, and outright stupid. They picked fights with him and even attacked him for having a villainous quirk, as if copying means that he's somehow stealing from them. I copy quirks, I don't steal them. And even if I could steal them, I'd give them right back. My mom wouldn't raise a thief. The boy mumbled to himself as he trudged his way back home, covered in bruises from the rough treatment of his classmates. He dreads what his mom will say or do when she finally sees him like this. For all the troubles he's been going through since getting his quirk, at least he had his mom throughout all of it. She was good like that. Nito appreciates her for everything she's done for him. Thus, Nito was not disappointed or even surprised by his mother's response. He was, however, shocked at how many curses he heard come from her mouth before she stormed out of the room to grab some bandages and ointment. After his injuries were treated, she calmed down and explained to Nito that, while they were originally moving to the Saitama Prefecture later that year, they could instead move within this week. They'd have to rush it, and Nito would have to start up the new school year a bit late, but that should be fine. He was a smart boy, he'd manage it well. He'd manage it because his mother said so. Simple as that. The move to their new apartment in the Saitama Prefecture was thankfully not too big of a hassle. They didn't have too much to pack up and move. They didn't have to bring any furniture with them either, as the apartment was fully furnished. Nito only had to adjust to a new school with new classmates and hopefully find a friend or two. Easy, right? It turns out it was actually quite easy for the young boy. All of this in part to one young girl with seaweed green hair and an infectious smile. The girl had noticed the blonde-haired boy sitting on his own during recess. She sat down next to him and asked him what his name and quirk was, her mom teaching her that little trick. I'm Nito Monoma, and my quirk is called copy. When I touch someone, I can use their quirk for 10 minutes. The boy told her, slightly wary due to his previous treatment. The girl, however, surprised him with her next sentence. My name is Setsuna Tokage, and I think that your quirk sounds awesome. Setsuna said with a bright grin, showing off her sharp teeth which glimmered in the sun. Yeah, but it's a villainous quirk. Steals quirks from other people? Nito said dejectedly. Are you a villain? Setsuna asked him bluntly. What? No, of course not. Nito responded in indignation. Then you don't have a villainous quirk. It's your quirk, you can use it how you want, right? Setsuna said, breaking down Nito's walls without even meaning to. To Nito, though, it was as if someone opened a door. Nowhere close to a fix, but a road to progress. A road to healing. Someone else who believed in him. Setsuna Tokage was the first person Nito had ever met that told him his quirk wasn't villainous, and that he wasn't a thief for using it. She instead told him how awesome his quirk was and showed off her own lizard tail splitter, as she called it, and asked him if her quirk was gross or weird. Nito obviously replied that, no, it wasn't gross or weird by any means. Quirks are the coolest thing in the whole world to Monoma. Almost every quirk is akin to a new toy for the young boy. With his copy quirk, he can play with any of them whenever he wants. Setsuna then sprung another question on him. Do you like dinosaurs? She asked with a dead serious expression. Nito answered the same as any other kid in his shoes would respond to the question. Obviously. The velociraptor is the coolest dinosaur, don't you think? The boy answered with a self-assured grin. Lame. At least you like dinosaurs, but velociraptors, really? You couldn't have chosen the almighty Shringosaurus? The sharp-toothed girl retorted with an exasperated, yet friendly, sigh. Oh well, I guess we are friends now. She said to Nito, the same way that someone would talk about the weather. It was just an obvious fact to her. Nito blinked a handful of times at how easy it was to make a friend. His first friend. He shakily rubbed at a few tears that almost escaped his eyes, not wanting to be seen as a crybaby in front of his new friend. And wasn't that a rush? Being able to say that he has a friend now. The two of them would later spend time messing with their classmates and using their quirks, tapping people on the opposite shoulder, playing thumb wars from across the room, and just having fun. Thoughts of the future and dreams nowhere on their minds at all, just the sense of belonging and friendship. They had each other, and that was good enough for them. Nito and Setsuna were having the time of their lives playing together at a local park. It was the weekend and they were enjoying the time they spent with one another. No worries about bullies or schoolwork, just friends having fun. This culminated in the two kids picking up a third for their slowly forming group. Denki Kaminari. The new yellow-haired boy of the friend group was a brash and energetic child, kind to a fault and friendly beyond measure. He rushed headlong into the two friends that he saw playing with all the grace of a sledgehammer. "Howdy! I'm Denki. Nice to meet ya." The bold boy in a snipe shirt exclaimed with a massive grin on his face, exaggerating the way he pronounced Snipe's signature catchphrase. He pointed finger guns at Nito and Setsuna, a slight spark of electricity on his fingertips, alongside his sunny smile. Nito was immediately in the other boy's vicinity and bombarding him with questions. "What does your quirk do? How does it work? Can I try it out?" "Try it out?" Denki asked, confused by what the other boy was saying to him. "Don't worry about him, he has a copy quirk and he just wants to play with you twos. There's no harm in using it." Setsuna, ever the friendly voice of reason, spelt out for Denki, a large grin on her face. The girl then noticed something. "Oh, by the way, I'm Setsuna. Setsuna Tokich. The guy nerding out about your quirk is my best friend, Nito Minoma. Sorry that we didn't tell you our names beforehand," she said with a sheepish hand on the back of her head, embarrassed at her lack of manners. She also didn't take note that her hand was no longer attached to her wrist, still scratching the back of her head. "Whoa, is that your quirk? That's so cool. Also, I'd love to see what my quirk looks like when someone else uses it." Denki exclaimed with joy and wonder. This reaction stunned Nito and Setsuna, unfiltered shock showing on their faces at how kind Denki was. They turned to look at each other and nodded, both confirming to one another that they heard Denki right. Nito shakily reached out for a handshake, with Denki firmly clasping hands with him, bright smile prominently on display. Immediately, Nito felt a surge within himself, as if he was on a sugar high, pure energy coursing through his body. Nito, on instinct, splayed both his hands outwards, electricity arcs between each finger and palm. His hair started to get a bit fuzzy due to the static, but other than that, nothing else seemed to physically affect Nito while using Denki's quirk. Nito lightly touched Denki's arm, sending an electric jolt down said limb. Denki didn't even flinch, just staring in wonder at someone else using his quirk. Setsuna, on the other hand, most certainly did flinch when she went to run a hand through Nito's static-lined hair, letting out a small yelp in the process. Denki was broken out of his amazement by a quick thought. "Do you feel any dumber?" the boy asked, seemingly out of nowhere. "What?" Nito asked, confusion coloring his face. "Why would I feel dumber after using an electricity quirk?" "Well, I don't like to talk about it, but when I use my quirk, my brain starts to go a bit dumb." Denki responded, dejected, in fear that his new friends would leave him over his quirk being so lame. The answer he received changed his life in more ways than one. "Why are you using it on your brain?" Nito questioned the boy, dead serious. "Why am I what?" Denki asked, completely lost at this point in the conversation. "I'm not using it on my brain. It feels like I shouldn't, so I don't. I'm using my hands for it right now," Nito said, as if that fully explained to Denki what exactly he was supposedly doing wrong. "It feels like there's a blockage right around here on my neck," Nito explained, pointing at the top of his neck, right where it met the back of his head. "It feels like there's resistance here, so I just didn't go through that. I think that might be why you go dumb. You're using it in your head. You're just frying your brain." Denki just stared at the boy that single-handedly helped him with the biggest downside of his quirk with a deadpan expression. Nope. That's it. We're friends now, alright? And there is nothing you can do to stop me. The electrically charged boy then declared resolutely with a shining grin. The three continued playing for the entire day, trying out new ideas with their quirks whenever they thought of them. Denki had dragged Setsuna and Nito to the dojo that he went to after school one day, excitedly chatting with the two about how awesome the place was. Once there, the trio took notice of a gray-haired boy clad entirely in steel and an orange-haired girl with massive hands fighting in the center of the ring. Nito immediately perked up with the two cool quirks on display, while Setsuna was distracted by the actual fight between the combatants. With a mighty shove, the girl had finally pushed the metallic boy out of the ring, getting the proctor to call the match in her favor. The orange-haired girl then calmly walked over to her previous opponent and offered now shrunken hand, one which her opponent gladly took a hold of, and, with surprising strength for someone so young, pulled him to his feet single-handedly. With a boisterous voice and a wide grin the boy shouted out, "That fight was so fun, Kendo. You're so manly." Nito and Setsuna both had a deadpan stare on their face after that comment. Denki, on the other hand, was smiling like his birthday had come early. "Big sister Kendo, come meet my friends. They're the ones I was telling you all about." The sparky boy had shouted out to the orange-haired girl, now known to Nito and Setsuna as Kendo. Denki started to drag the two over towards Kendo and the gray-haired boy. Said boy, upon noticing the three coming over, promptly introduced himself. "Hello. I am Tetsu. Pleasure to meet you." The excitement seeped out from every pore of his body. He was bold, boisterous, and very in-your-face about things, but he seemed pretty nice so far. "Nice to meet you. I'm Setsuna Tokage and this is Nito Minoma." Setsuna introduced the two, as was starting to become customary for them. The reason why this was the case readily apparent as Nito was already about to start opening a flurry of questions on both Kendo and Tetsu. "What's your quirks? What is your skin made of, Tetsu? How large do your hands grow, Kendo? Can I try out both of your quirks?" The resident quirk copier asked in rapid succession, barely giving any time for responses before his next question was asked. This, of course, led to Kendo and Tetsu answering only his final question, as the others were rapidly leaving their short-term memory in the myriad of questions. "Try out our quirks?" The two asked in perfect sync, confusion plain on their faces. Denki and Setsuna, seeing their expressions, started laughing hysterically. Denki, in particular, quite loudly. "Was that what I looked like when Nito asked me that?" The boy barely managed to get out between fits of laughter. Setsuna was barely holding onto his shoulders to keep herself from falling to the floor with her own laughter. She wasn't able to respond to the question besides aggressively nodding her head. This time, Nito was the one that had to clarify what he meant. "I have a copy quirk, so I can use other people's as well. It doesn't hurt them or anything, I swear. I just thought that you both had cool quirks and I really want to use them." The boy said, sincerity shining through his voice and hope in his eyes. Tetsu looked toward Kendo to see what she would do, and when she nodded, he did the same. Both of them stepped forward and offered Nito a hand. Nito grasped onto them with visible excitement. When both of them connected with Nito's hand, he felt something that he never had before when it came to his quirk. Tetsu's quirk was rigid, with a sort of grinding sensation, like the folding of metal on top of itself. Kendo's, on the other hand, just felt strong, as if Nito's hands could now break stone as if it was paper. The difference, compared to all the other times that Nito had copied a quirk, however, was in how the two seemed like they could slot into place together. Nito pictured it like a square peg in a square hole, they just fit somehow. No other quirks had ever done that for Nito, so he slotted them together and tried it out. Nito developed a metallic shine onto his body, silvery and reflective. What wasn't expected, however, was the large hands he also now sported. Gigantic metallic fingers stared back at him, his reflection gleaming in each one, a massive smile blooming on his face. Then his nose started to bleed. Nito proceeded to abruptly pass out onto the dojo floor, only seeing the worried faces of his friends before falling unconscious. Nito Monoma woke up several hours later, the sun having already set. He was at the hospital now. The dojo must have thankfully called an ambulance. There was a rhythmic and steady beep nearby, a heart monitor, and an IV attached to his arm. His mom was resting her head by his hospital bed, stirred awake at his movements. "You worry me more than anyone else I've ever met, you know that?" His mother asked in jest, tears almost falling from her periwinkle-colored eyes. "I'm just glad that you're well enough to wake up. You really scared me there." The tears flowed freely now. Nito didn't really know what to do besides saying, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to worry you. I'll never do it ever again. I promise." To which his mother could only fondly laugh in response. This confused the boy greatly. Wasn't she mad at him for hurting himself? Seeing his apparent confusion, his mother told him a simple truth. "If you are going to be a hero someday, you're going to get hurt. You're going to cry. You're going to deal with the worst of the worst. I'm not going to get mad at you for getting hurt or blame you. I love you too much for that, Nito." She spoke, tone completely shaken due to the tears coming from her eyes, her love and warmth showing through. Nito moved to wipe a tear away from her face, his efforts causing her to smile. "Nito, I just need you to promise me something, all right? You will always try to come home. Boys, can you promise me that? I don't want to lose you like I lost your father." His mother asked him, resolve blazing in her eyes despite, or maybe because of, her tears. Nito hugged her tightly with the one arm that didn't have the IV in it, tears flowing from his own eyes. He had never met his father, but could still feel the void from his absence. He swore to himself that he would never leave his mom alone like that. Never. "Mom, I'll be safer. I won't leave you. I promise." Nito spoke, voice absolutely brimming with conviction. This moment solidified why Nito was going to be a hero. He might be a side character in his own life right now, but to his mom, he was the main character. And he was going to make her proud. He promised, after all. Izuku did not sleep well the previous night. The dream he had and all the energy not sitting right within him. He was tired both physically and mentally, and thus, was not the most observant at the moment. This would cause him to make a wrong turn, leading him directly to Katsuki Bakugu. "Effing Deku!" Bakugu snarled as soon as he saw the younger boy, explosions popping in his hands. Izuku flinched at the noise and looked around. He had nowhere to run and knew what was coming next. He couldn't stop shaking, legs unmoving, and heart hammering in his chest. He was terrified. He wasn't aware of what was happening until Bakugu caught up to him with a vicious punch directly into his gut. He was sent sprawling into the dirt below his feet, pain blossoming in his stomach. With tears in his eyes, Izuku shakily looked upwards at Bakugu. Upon really seeing him for the first time today, something started hurting in Izuku's head. Searing pain tore through Izuku, cascading down his body like electricity. Everything felt like it was on fire. It hurt so much, too much, like it was all that Izuku could feel. Every nerve of his body lighting up with pure pain, as if even the air around him wanted to inflict agony. He'd happily take more of Bakugu's punches and explosions just to never feel this ever again. Izuku could distantly hear someone screaming at this point. Who was it? It certainly wasn't Bakugu, as he was right in front of Izuku and snarling at him. Maybe someone else? But there wasn't anyone else around. Oh, it was Izuku himself. He was the one screaming at the complete torture his body was feeling. All he could focus on besides the torment his body was going through was Bakugu himself. Focusing on him seemed to dull the pain somewhat. Specifically on his hands, arms, and shoulders, for some reason. The way they tensed before striking Izuku again was mesmerizing. Izuku felt his body soothe itself upon noticing the little ways that Bakugu would move. It just made sense in some abstract way. As if Izuku should be able to move like that as well. Izuku felt the pulse from last night again. The presence in his mind reaching its way towards him, strands of power creeping forwards and latching onto him. Izuku felt it before he even knew what was happening. The way his body started subtly shifting. His hands, once smooth and soft, were now coated with the same calluses from last night. Next, breathing came easier for him, lungs and blood flow stronger than before. His arms, previously shaking from the pain, now strongly holding himself up. Izuku feels stronger than the version of him from even a moment ago. He feels like a winner. And he will win. Katsuki, at this point, was going to hit Deku one last time, hopefully knocking him out and stopping his annoying screams. With a firm right hook launched at the smaller boy, he'd blast him to next week. What wasn't a part of the plan was how Deku launched himself at Katsuki like a feral animal, a vicious grin firmly on his face. Deku did not look like that. Deku also didn't fight back, and Katsuki was going to put him in his place. Right palm now facing the manic boy, Katsuki let out a sizable explosion, covering the upper half of Deku's body. The crazed boy darted out of the smoke caused by the explosion, burn marks on his face and hot on Katsuki's trail with a right hook primed. Katsuki would not let this hit him. He wouldn't stand for Deku to do any damage to him. Not that worthless garbage. Two palms now facing Deku, Katsuki lets out an even larger explosion, barely holding back from maiming the other boy. This one finally laying Deku flat on his butt. The little BSRD starts getting up after this, burn marks marring even more of his body, flesh burnt off in some places. The freak had a downright psychotic look on his face, eyes trying to pierce into Katsuki's very soul. And his smile, that disgusting smile, filled with far too many teeth for his comfort. There was a strange feeling in the back of Katsuki's mind. Something not feeling right. It was the way the nerd handled himself right now. It just wasn't like him in the slightest. Say what you wanted about Katsuki Bakugu, you couldn't deny his intelligence. The way Deku's eyes seemed to almost glow and how much he fought like Katsuki was what started to tip him off. That, and the fact that the other boy was also handling his explosions better than he ever had before, almost like he could resist them. Just like Katsuki himself. "You're copying me, aren't you, you piece of shit?" The explosive boy shouted out, pure vitriol coating his voice. Deku just kept smiling, as if he was lost in his own little world, and maybe he was. He didn't really seem like he was all there mentally at the moment. He did start to tense up, however, body curling in on itself in preparation for another attack. Just before he could launch himself, however, he suddenly fell to his knees, eyes flickering, and passed out then and there. Katsuki just clicked his tongue in annoyance, kicked Deku as he was laying on the dirt one last time, and walked away, but not before saying one final statement. "You could have at least done one more attack, you FING loser." Izuku woke up a couple of hours later, still laying in the dirt. He barely had any idea what was happening to him back there. One moment, he was perfectly fine. The next, he was attacking Bakugu like a rabid animal. He'd never admit it, but a part of him felt slightly better after that fight, if you could even call it that. Another part of him, a significantly larger part, felt nothing but pain from the burn marks on his body. Even now, Izuku could still feel the presence in the back of his mind, much more solid and tangible than before. He didn't know what he did to make it happen, but he was somewhat looking forward to that feeling again. Of being a winner. He lost, that much was certain, but he gained even more out of this exchange. Trading pain for more information on his quirk was always worth it. He just had to figure out how he was supposed to activate it now. "It just SCKS that I didn't win." Izuku mumbled to himself, tone reeking of self-doubt. "Wait, why do I care so much about winning?" Izuku thought suddenly, completely floored by his previous statement. "I never cared about winning before, but now, it's all I can think of." Izuku pondered, millions of thoughts ground down to a halt by that admission. He was going to get to the bottom of this, but not before he got home and patched himself up. Hopefully without his mom seeing him first. He didn't want to lie to her, after all. Izuku had managed to bandage himself up and treat his burns without his mother noticing. He was now in his bedroom, toiling away in his latest notebook about everything he remembered about the fight. From the way his body felt to the rush of pure adrenaline in his system. He wrote it all down, not leaving out a single detail. He could still feel the presence, beckoning him to just use it. Why was he even resisting? He just wants answers, after all. So he let it take over. He felt significantly better now. As if there was nothing that could harm him. He was the best, after all. A winner. There it was, the thoughts of winning, and the sting of defeat. It all crashed into him now, grounding his previous weakness into a fine dust. He was better now. He was better. He had to be in order to be the best. Izuku never did notice the way that his quirk was affecting him at first. The ways that he wasn't really himself. The way that his quirk was using him. Unfortunately, he wouldn't realize until it was far too late to do something about it, and by the time that happened, he'd welcome it with open arms. Izuku was once again dreaming, tossing and turning as he did so. Within this dream, there was something just a bit off. Something that felt wrong. He was back in the dark mists once more, surrounded on all sides and unable to move. Looking around, he noticed the transparent version of Bakugo, but this time, shadow-coated tendrils were surrounding him. They seemed to cling and claw their way into him, causing cracks to form and motes of light to fall away, reminding Izuku of blood leaking from a wound. The Pseudo-Bakugo turned to Izuku, barely craning his, maybe it's, neck to stare at him, voids for eyes and deadpan expression fixed firmly upon their features. Then, with a startling cascade of cracks, their form shattered, pieces of their arms completely falling away, the sounds making Izuku flinch in fear and nausea. The mist surrounding them, on the other hand, started greedily lapping away at the broken motes of light the severed limbs left behind, visibly swelling with their meal. Izuku began to fall to his knees, barely propped up by his hands, and vomited on the floor. By the time he regained control of himself, the abstract form of Bakugo had walked up to him, mumbles flowing from his mouth. "Give them back. You don't deserve them. Give them back. Give them back. Give them back." Their form was shifting with every sentence, distorting them, making them look and feel inhuman. A monster. Izuku tried to do something, anything, to give the other boy back his limbs. He tried to ask the presence and mist for help, but what he received would do even more damage instead. The tendrils from before surged out from the mist, skewered the other boy in front of Izuku, ripped his body into small particles of light, and then started ravenously devouring the leftover portions. Izuku could only stand there in shock, his mind unable to comprehend what he just saw. He vomited again. The tendrils began soothing Izuku, rubbing his back and making sure he didn't puke all over himself. He wasn't sure what was real or not anymore. Was Bakugo dead? Was he going to jail? Is he a villain now? No, this was all a dream. Actually, a nightmare. It had to be. Izuku wouldn't just sit by while someone died, right? While the young boy was asking himself these questions after witnessing this event, the mist had started to seep its way into him. It soothed his mind and started to heal him. It was mentally draining. His eyes flickering in and out of focus until he eventually fell unconscious, no longer in this nightmare. Seizing the opportunity they were given, the tendrils began to surround the now fully asleep boy. Motes of light shining in between their dark and misty wisps, glowing like stars in the night sky. These lights then started to enter the body of the boy, focused mainly on his arms and shoulders, yet some helped to cover the rest of him, almost. Like a blanket. Once the light show had ended, the sleeping boy no longer had a look of horror on his face, just a gentle smile and a wordless hum coming from him. It was a shame he would not remember this dream for a very long time. Izuku woke up in a dazed state, tired, yet not knowing why. He had slept for enough time last night, a full 8 hours in fact. He also didn't know how he healed from most of the burns he was suffering from yesterday, the aches startlingly absent. He still had to gingerly get up from his bed due to the bandages he had wrapped around himself the previous night. They clung to his skin, sticky and somewhat itchy. He slowly removed the bandages, slick with a layer of grime, blood, and sweat. They pooled to the floor with a dull thud, their soaked visage giving them a hefty weight. The smell immediately made Izuku's nose curl in disgust. He quickly tossed the bandages into his trash can, before spraying his room with air freshener to cleanse out the smell. Taking a moment to look at himself in the mirror, Izuku came to a startling realization. He no longer had the burns from yesterday on his body, even his face being unharmed. The cuts and scratches, however, still remained affixed in place on him. How the hell? Izuku asked himself, confusion plain to see on his face. How are my burn marks healed but the cuts and scratches still remaining? How does that work? Is it a property of my quirk or dash? He questioned to himself, only to get cut off by his mother opening his door, surprise on her face at his cuts and scratches. Izuku, honey? What happened to you? She questioned in worry. I just fell a couple of times at the park yesterday, nothing too bad, see? Izuku responded, telling a partial truth. He didn't want to outright lie to his mother after all. Oh, okay then, just make sure to be more careful, alright? She responded, seemingly unaware of the half-truth of his statement. Make sure to bandage up your scratches and get ready for breakfast, okay? His mother kindly instructed him before closing his door. Izuku sighed in relief and admonishment over lying to his mother, even if only slightly. He already stressed her out so much he couldn't put his issues on her plate as well. It wouldn't be fair to her at all. Life isn't fair at all. Izuku scrambled into the bathroom, took a hot shower, bandaged up his cuts, then went to the dinner table to start having breakfast with his mother. Hopefully, today will be a good day. Izuku could not tell if today was better or worse than what he normally went through. Everyone ignored him. They just acted like he didn't even exist. It wasn't the worst thing in the world, just odd. Oh well, he'd take what he can get at this point. At least this way he doesn't have to deal with any comments or bruises. Oi, shithead, we need to talk. Bakugo roughly commanded Izuku the moment he saw him, recess just starting. Izuku, cornered as he was, had no choice but to listen. Bakugo roughly slammed Izuku's back into the tree they were next to. You gonna tell me what yesterday was about, you freak? The force of the slam made the bark start to dig into Izuku's flesh, opening up some of his scratches from yesterday. I don't know ww what you're talking about, Bakugo. Izuku stuttered out, a combination of fear and pain getting to him. You do, you piece of shit. Don't lie to me. I'll beat the answers out of you if I have to. Bakugo snarls out and slams Izuku back into the tree, rage simmering within his gaze, and stunning Izuku firmly in place. It's my work. Izuku barely gets out, the pain and a possible concussion making him stutter and slur his words once more. His entire world is spinning now, and him with it. Bakugo just drops him to the floor and spits in front of him. Don't ever even think of copying me again, got it? You FNG loser. It was with that final word that something just snapped within Izuku. The presence, once more at the forethought of his mind, simmering just below the surface, offered him power again, enough to beat Bakugo soundly. Beat him at his own game. Izuku just had to let it happen. He did. With a violent shout and a manic grin, Izuku jumped at Bakugo, pain and possible concussion forgotten in the wake of his possible victory. Bakugo just turned and fired 2 explosions into Izuku, laying him on the ground before kicking him upside the head, sending him to the depths of unconsciousness. It doesn't matter if you resist my explosions if I can just kick you and knock you out. Bakugo spoke out, gaining the attention of everyone nearby. They saw him beat Deku. They saw him defend himself. Bakugo was the hero. Deku was the villain. Izuku woke up later in the nurse's office. Despite being injured often while at school, he never really came here because of the attention that would gather. Being quirkless left much to be desired when it came to getting help after all. The nurse checked up on him briefly when she saw him awake, making sure he wasn't too terribly injured before sending him off to the principal's office. His mother was there already, shaking like a leaf and looking at him with a questioning gaze. Izuku, we were just talking about you. Sit down. The principal spoke, tone brokering no room for arguments, a firm hand gesturing to the second empty seat in front of him. Izuku shakily sat down, head still spinning, barely catching half of the ensuing conversation. This behavior cannot Izuku felt lost, barely keeping his grip on reality around him. Is there anything we wish? The world was spinning even more. He was going to be sick. He acts like a delink dash, everything was starting to dim. He felt like he was falling through his chair and into the floor below his feet. Izuku! Izuku! His mother finally snapped, gaining his attention thoroughly for the moment. What? Izuku finally responded, still dazed and disoriented. We need to go. Go grab your bag, I'll drive us home. His mother instructed him, giving no time for a response. The walk with his mother to grab his bag left Izuku completely drained somehow, mind a million miles away from his body. He felt like he was watching a screen, barely cognizant of himself. Almost like he was trapped in a game he couldn't shut off. His mother was talking, saying something, but for the life of him, Izuku couldn't say what it was that she was telling him. It was almost like he was underwater, his ears flooded and unable to hear. Unwilling to hear. The drive back to his home was a blur. Moment he was at the school, the next he was sitting in his bed, his mother appearing to scold him over something. He still couldn't hear her, muffled as she was. Muffled as the white noise in his head made her. She left the room at some point, a sort of smile forcefully stuck on her face, trying to make him feel better. About what exactly he wasn't sure. He wasn't sure about a lot of things anymore. Izuku drifted off to sleep, even though it was midday. He just didn't have it in him to stay awake right now. His eyelids started feeling heavy, started falling, then finally dropped, and with them, Izuku's reign on the world around him. Izuku Midoriya would not awaken for the next week. Locked within his own mind, all Izuku could hear was fragments of broken glass, screams, and white noise. Make it stop. A part of Izuku fragmented alongside the occasional sounds of broken glass and screams. He'd scream his throat raw in time with the other screams he could hear, not knowing if what he was hearing were his own or not. He learned to fear himself. More than he feared anyone else. Izuku Midoriya found a new fear of white noise. An absolute terror of being by himself with just the sounds to accompany him. He dreaded the white noise more than anything else, the way that it grated on him mentally. He was trapped with it. Trapped in this hell. He just wanted to get out and break free. He didn't know what to do with the white noise. He just wanted to forget. He just wanted someone to reach out a hand. Just one hand, that's all he wanted. All he needed. Please. Someone. Anyone. Izuku Midoriya would not consciously remember this week of torture, but his soul would remember. Just like the second dream, it would be remembered, even if unknowingly. Izuku Midoriya's soul will always remember that pain. Boys. A sterile smell awoke Izuku from his sleep. It had to be a hospital. He would recognize this exact smell anywhere. The thick and pungent smell of disinfectant mixed with the sharpness of rubbing alcohol. Izuku's eyes started to slowly pry themselves open, the task Herculean in effort. There was a man that he wasn't expecting to ever see again waiting for him. Izuku, back to the land of the living I see. Dr. Tsubasa said in greeting. What? Izuku questioned the mustached man, a deep tiredness seeping through his voice, raspy from underuse. You were dying, did you know that? The doctor said bluntly, uncaring of any social tact. You're lucky that I was in the area to take you here. Callous undertones carried the severity of his words. Wait, what happened? How are you here? Where is Tsubasa? Izuku questioned, starting to cling more onto consciousness than the last time he was awake. He needed answers, and he was going to get them. Tsubasa, you mean my grandson? He's dead. The doctor admitted, as if that fact held no value to him. As if the loss of a life meant nothing to him. As if Tsubasa meant nothing to him. How can you be so cruel? Izuku asked, fear coursing through him, heart thumping away in his chest at breakneck speed. It's not cruelty, it's life. Do you expect me to raise him back from the dead? I didn't think that you took me for a necromancer. The older man retorted, completely clinical in his dissenting opinion of Izuku's feelings. The doctor continued on with his tirade in lieu of allowing Izuku to respond. You cannot change fundamental principles in this world. You cannot change the direction life puts you on. You cannot change anything without the power necessary to make those changes. Such as you cannot change your quirklessness, I cannot magically sprout wings and fly away. Why bother? Why dash? Izuku finally cuts the doctor off with a singular statement. Actually, I do have a quirk. What? The doctor spoke, tone icy as he slowly craned his head to stare at Izuku, eyes hidden behind the glare of his large glasses. What do you mean that you have a quirk? The older man is now undeniably staring at Izuku, pondering his very existence, as if given enough time he could crack open Izuku's entire being. Maybe he could. As Izuku was about to answer, his mother walked into the room, snacks in hand and a cup of coffee. She looked so drained, as if the fight had left her a long time ago, and maybe it had. Thankfully, upon seeing her son, alive and awake, her expression lit up, tears escaping from the corners of her eyes. Izuku, you're awake? You're awake. My baby is awake. Inko cried out in pure relief, tears cascading down her face and leaving veritable puddles on the floor. She quickly ran over and hugged her son, holding him tightly as if afraid he'd disappear if she let go. She was painfully correct in that assumption. The doctor, seeing this as an opportune moment, informed the distressed mother that he would go into the next room to run some samples and try to see what happened properly. In the ensuing conversation with his mother, Izuku never did get to tell the doctor what his quirk was. He never did get his quirk registered. Dr. Tsubasa, Daruma Ujiko, and currently now Kyudai Garaki. Names that should have no correlation between one another. Names that were held by the same man for over a century now. Kyudai Garaki had never seen such fascinating DNA in his entire life, all 118 years of it. It looked like a blank slate, which shouldn't be the case at all. It almost reminded him of the master. Izuku Midoriya, you will be very interesting indeed, the doctor mused to himself, enraptured by the data he was collecting. Valuable data indeed. The villain factory Project Master was talking about might just get a new upgrade. More data would need to be acquired though, and a potential first subject in mind. Oh yes, I do love when a plan all comes together. Now, Kurogyri, warp me to my lab in Jaku. I have the urge to create some art. Garaki commands an unseen individual, a black mist forming in front of the doctor. The mad scientist leaves through the black mist, the room now left empty, only thick silence permeating the room now. The world will never be left the same. Nito Minoma hated the hospital. It was always so stuffy and awful smelling, the disinfectant way too strong for his liking. At least he was getting discharged right now. You ready to go, Nito? His mother asked him, in her calm and reassuring tone that he'd swear she practiced in the mirror. Of course I'm ready. A hero always has to be prepared after all. Nito declared imperiously, his mother giggling at the over-the-top manner he spoke in. He smiled at that, glad to bring some much-needed levity to his mother. Anything to ease her burden. Fortunately, his friends were waiting for him at his place, his mother happily trading contact information with the other parents and organizing the meetup. The moment the two walked into the door, Setsuna did her best impersonation of a cannonball and shot at Nito full force, knocking the wind out of him. You are such a dummy, you know that? Why would you try out something new without supervision? Setsuna cried out, tears falling down her face and soaking into Nito's shirt. All he could do was pat her back in order to console her. Well, technically I was supervised by all of you. Nito replied with a cheeky grin, trying to defuse the situation. He received a light shock from Denki for that one. Okay, I deserve that. But look, I'm alright now. Got the all clear from the doctors and everything. I'm fine. This response did significantly better at calming the group down, Tetsu looking less tense and Kendo unclenching her fist that was by her side. Setsuna had stopped crying at this point, now giggling slightly at just how bad Nito's previous joke was. You might be a dummy, but you're our dummy. You got that, mister? She said, wiping the rest of her tears from her face, offering Nito a shaky smile. Yeah man, you can't just scare us like that anymore. I can't lose out on one of my two best friends. Setsuna would be way too much on her own. Denki said in mock jest, playfully avoiding the hand Setsuna sent his way to noogie him for his snark. Tetsu and Kendo turned to each other, nodded in sync, then bowed their heads towards Nito. We apologize for any pain you went through using our quirks. They apologized, perfectly aligned, even down to the way their shoulders squared away. No, none of that now. I hurt myself by accident from my own bad decisions. You two did nothing wrong, understood? Nito protested their apology, owning up to his own mistake. It was his fault for not using his quirk properly, no one else's. A main character wouldn't fail in using their quirk properly. Self-deprecating thoughts pushed to the side for now, Nito bowed towards Kendo and Tetsu instead. Thank you for taking care of me and making sure that I received proper medical care. I am in your debt. Kendo and Tetsu waved him off, not unkindly, but to show him they wouldn't hold this above his head. Don't mention it, man, I'm just glad that you're all right. Tetsu responded in his boisterous way. It's fine, you didn't mean to get hurt. Accidents happen, especially in training. Kendo told Nito kindly, positivity radiating from her tone. Well then, now that we have that all behind us, let's play some games, yeah? Denki, ever the friendly voice, asked the entire group, excitement visibly pouring off of him. With that, the tension had completely vanished, and the group spent that day just having fun together. Nito was under strict orders from the doctors to not use his quirk for a bit, so playing around with those was off the table. Fortunately, a long-standing tradition was still available. Video games. You can't play anymore, it's just not fair, Nito. We can't even beat you 4 versus 1. Denki exclaimed in mock horror, the TV proudly displaying Nito's 50-game win streak. Nito then proceeded to coach Setsuna on how to play each character, leading to her getting banned as well. After he proceeded to teach Tetsu of all people, it was decided that Nito just wasn't allowed to touch competitive games anymore in any capacity. The copy quirk user was just glad that he had people in his life that enjoyed him for who he was. For what he was. He wouldn't trade a single one of them for the world. Nito was training at the park in front of his friends and his mom. A week had now passed after his incident, meaning he finally had permission to use his quirk again, albeit with adult supervision present. He wanted to try out combining quirks, like he had during that day at the dojo. Only this time, much more safely and controlled. He started off with steel and electrification. The results were, pun not intended, shocking. Nito seemed to radiate a magnetic field around the areas of his body that he turned into steel. Denki had quite a bit of fun sticking utensils and other things that were magnetic to Nito's body, a sheepish grin on his face every time he was caught doing so. He did manage to get pretty creative with some of the ways he attached things at least. Alright, enough of that, I feel the quirk fading away now. Nito said happily, with forks, knives, and chopsticks coating his back like the scales of a stegosaurus, courtesy of a drawing Setsuna had made as an example. After another 10 seconds, all the utensils fell off of him and clattered to the floor, Denki sheepishly scratching the back of his head. I'll clean that up, ma'am. Denki declared to Nito's mom, embarrassed beyond belief. She just giggled at the boy and helped him pick them off the floor to clean later. Tetsu, standing further back than the rest of the group, finally took some steps forward. This fear was due to a very comedic first-time experience with electromagnetism, causing the metallic boy to spin uncontrollably like a top in front of Nito's hands, turning green from motion sickness. The things Tetsu does for his friends. How do you feel, Nito? His mother asked him, calmly but resolutely, ready to stop everything at the drop of a hat. I'm doing just fine, in fact, I feel better than ever. Nito replied, not a hint of deceit in his tone. He genuinely felt amazing at the moment. Who knew quirk combinations could be this much fun? Just make sure that you pace yourself, alright? His mother lectured him for seemingly the 8th or 9th time that day. He'd listen though, he's a good son after all. He kept experimenting more with the quirks of his friends, finding even more things out about their quirks. Those combinations would be written about, scrutinized, and perfected. When the time was right, Nito would rise as a hero. A proper hero. He no longer wanted to remain a side character. He wanted to be a main character. He wanted to be the main character. School would quickly become a boring affair for Nito. He'd wake up, eat breakfast with his mom, then prepare for his walk to school. Then he'd walk to school with Setsuna, Denki, and Tetsu, as Kendo went to a different school in Chiba. They'd catch the train to school, go to morning classes, eat lunch, continue with afternoon classes, then head home or to the dojo. It was monotonous, simple as that. Nito hated monotony. Maybe it was due to his quirk? He'd always loved doing something new after all. At least he started to get more into the swing of things. He'd learn, train, and hang out with his friends. The most exciting thing was training at the Kendo family dojo every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. That brought a smile to Nito's face every day, even when the exhaustion from the exercise was bone deep. He knew that he was improving and he loved every moment of it. This would continue for the next handful of years, only interrupted by the periodic villain attacks holding up a street or someone breaking the train system for the 100th time in the month. Life was good for Nito Monoma, and he wouldn't have it any other way. Izuku had been ushered out of the hospital by another doctor and his mother the moment they received confirmation he could leave. The whole procedure was a blur of motion to the young boy. He was unconscious for an entire week. A whole week, gone just like that. He apparently suffered from a concussion and full-body exhaustion. The doctors had no idea how he had even done so. The car ride felt heavy yet light simultaneously, filled with his mother's soft humming, but with no conversation to be had. Izuku didn't know if he preferred it that way. At least when they finally got home, Izuku could retreat to his room for a bit, still taken aback by his loss of time. A whole week, how? The young boy pondered to himself. As he was laying on his bed and staring up at his ceiling in thought, his mother entered the room. She looked uneasy, with a flickering gaze and shaky shoulders. "Izuku, honey, we have to talk about what we are going to do from here," she said simply, not divulging any context for Izuku to follow. "What do you mean?" the boy asked cautiously, unaware exactly of what she was talking about. "Your school suspended you, remember? You fought Katsuki for no reason. I still have no idea what you were thinking." Disappointment was apparent in her tone, sending aftershocks of anger through Izuku. He did not act on his feelings though, his mom didn't deserve it. "What can I do?" he instead asked her, trying to put his issues to the side for the moment. "Well, currently, you have another week before you go back for classes. For now, you will study here in your room." She instructed him simply, leaving no room for arguments. "Yes, ma'am," Izuku responded, just hoping to have this all behind him. He would have that wish soon enough. Kyudai Garaki had just finished the surgery for number 6. It was a success. The first, next-level villain. Bombify, regeneration, overclock, disguise, radio waves, and self-detonate. 6 quirks, all in one body, while retaining the user's mind. Kyudai Garaki had just made a scientific breakthrough. Number 6, activate. Garaki ordered, tone absolute. Number 6 rising in response from the operation table. "I have it, right? I have overclock?" Number 6 asked, excitement bleeding through his voice alongside an undercurrent of mania. "Yes, my child, you now possess overclock. It is your quirk now," Garaki said to the younger man, a hint of fondness seeping into his tone for his creation. The room went deathly quiet in an instant, all energy completely sapped away. Fear flashed through the bodies of every inhabitant of the room. A monitor turned on, its display reading, audio only, and a voice rang out. A feeling of overwhelming power radiated from the monitor, the voice on the other end exuding malice. "Send number 6 to me, I wish to test them," the voice commanded, and Garaki, hearing the voice, acquiesced immediately. His master had commanded him, so his will must be done. "You heard him, go now," Garaki instructed the freshly awoken man, and with a button press, a portal made of black mist formed to whisk him away. The operating room was now empty except for the doctor himself. "Now, time to research that DNA. I can't wait to see what I discover," Garaki said with a large grin coating his face, eyes hidden behind the glare of his lenses. Many discoveries indeed. Number 6 was sitting in front of the strongest man in the world. Actually, not even a man, a demon. The Demon King of Japan, all for one. Number 6 immediately went on one knee and bowed before the man, making sure to not look him in the eyes, only at most flickering at his chest. "Ah, number 6, or would you prefer Rokuro? Maybe the Scarred Man? Rock, perchance? You have quite the number of names to choose from after all." All for one commented with a deep yet mocking laugh, taking his time on every single word, as if a single distasteful syllable would spell Rokuro's doom. "Arakuro is s fine, sensei." Rokuro stuttered out, fear gripping his heart and suppressing his mind. If he did a single thing wrong, All for one would kill him, effort and results be dead. Well then, Rokuro, I have an assignment for you. One that your talents should hopefully excel in. All for one requested, really demanded, of Rokuro. No matter the assignment, Rokuro would not fail, he couldn't fail. Not if he ever wanted to be like his idol. I require you to experiment more with our newest batch of trigger. Find people, any group will suffice, and use the trigger on them. We require data. Data which you will provide. Do we have an accord, Rokuro? All for one instructed his subordinate, and his answer was not found wanting. Yes, sensei, I will do as you request. Your wish is my command. Rokuro manages to get out without a stutter. All for one just smiled. That singular action forcing terror to spread through Rokuro's body, the air from his lungs stolen and leaving him without the ability to think through all the mental fog. Before he can spiral into a panic attack, he's sent off to a random alleyway, in or near Mizudafu, from the looks of it. A briefcase lands next to him, filled with rows of vials filled with a red substance. Trigger. Rokuro catches sight of a misty portal closing from near the briefcase, his eyes following the exact positioning the mist had before it closes off. He wasn't able to do that before. Taking a moment to breathe, Rokuro can feel a tingling in the back of his mind. Overclock. The quirk he had wanted for the last 10 years. Finally his to command. The surgery worked, it really worked. A manic grin grew on Rokuro's face with the vocal admission. He was just so happy. Rokuro grabbed the briefcase off of the floor, and with a brief usage of overclock, the world blurred. One moment, Rokuro Nomura was in an alleyway within Mizudafu, the next, he vanished without a trace beyond a small plume of sparks and smoke. To an outside observer, was he ever there at all? Izuku and Inko were watching the news while sitting in their living room. Instant villains, the reporter had called them. People whose quirks went out of control for some reason or another, leaving chaos and destruction in their wake. His mother watched with tears in her eyes at what was happening to those poor people. Her heart went out to everyone affected by these tragedies. Izuku was watching with fascination at how powerful the quirks he saw on display were. His mind dissecting and analyzing every last detail on the TV screen. He was enthralled. Izuku scrambled to grab his notebook to write in, feeling the urge to catalog everything he was seeing. His mother stared at him as he did so, watching in slight confusion and a small bit of worry. As soon as he came back, notebook in hand, he sat down in front of the TV and began to write, lost in his own little world. Every single action, strength, weakness, and even body type categorized, evaluated, and wrote down with precision. Izuku was in his element. His mother was silent as she stared at her son, not fully recognizing him from how he typically acted. Something was different. Something was wrong. Izuku, honey, what are you doing? She asked him in a gentle tone, not wanting to come off as aggressive and potentially startle him. He turned his head towards her, tilting it in confusion. I'm just writing. I do it all the time, you've seen me do it before. But did I do something wrong? He questioned her back, slightly defensive now that he saw the look in her eyes. Well, why are you taking notes about what is happening on the TV right now? She gently probed, wanting to get answers, but not at the expense of alienating her son. I have to stay informed if I want to be a hero. A hero should always know who or what they are fighting. Izuku said passionately, a bright light shining in his eyes. This answer made Inko smile, knowing her son was still his normal self. No matter what he went through, he was still her baby boy. Fears put aside, Inko would begin asking Izuku questions about his observations, incidentally sharpening his natural skill at analytics and battle breakdowns. This afternoon quickly became one of Izuku's favorites in recent times. Izuku was uncertain if he should have been happy or not to be back at school. Everyone was staring at him, unlike the last time he was here. He missed when they ignored him. It was easier. It was better. He did his best to ignore them. Let them stare as long as they wanted. If they were just staring, they weren't hurting him, right? Please just look away. He could hear them whispering to one another, treating him like an attraction at a zoo. He could see them point and jeer, laughing at him with their gaze. As if he was an animal. Izuku retreated into his classroom, found his desk in the back corner and sat down, just trying to relax himself. Unfortunately, he wasn't very successful at doing so. Katsuki Bakugo had entered the classroom and was now staring at Izuku. He did something that Izuku was not expecting though. He walked past him without a word. Bakugo had left Izuku alone for the first time in 3 years. Izuku didn't know how to feel about this fact. Bakugo didn't just leave Izuku alone. He'd torment him or give him some bruises and burns. He wouldn't just leave him alone. For the rest of the day Izuku was metaphorically on the edge of his seat, and sometimes physically, due to the uncertainty and fear he was feeling. His fear wasn't unfounded, as Bakugo cornered him after classes had let up for lunch. He just stared at Izuku, something in his gaze seemingly familiar, the reasoning unclear to Izuku. He had never seen Bakugo just stare like that. Bakugo sent a singular explosive punch into Izuku's stomach, knocking him painfully to the ground, before walking away. Not a single word was spoken between the two. Izuku could handle that. At least Bakugo didn't do anything more to him. The rest of the day was spent in silence for Izuku, no one talking to him or even looking at him. He was fine with that. He could handle it even when his burns flared up in pain. It was better than the alternative. As Izuku was walking home from school, late in coming home due to his injuries, he saw a strange man with a scar over his face walk into a nearby alleyway. Upon further inspection, the man seemingly vanished. Was he even there at all? "Hey, did your parents never teach you not to follow strangers?" a voice said right behind Izuku. With a startled yelp, Izuku turned around, catching sight of a tall man with a smile on his face. He didn't have a scar like the other man. The man held out his hands in a disarming manner, meant to placate Izuku into dropping his guard. It didn't work. "Hey, calm down, I don't mean any harm. My name is Rock, I'm a local here. I just wanted to make sure that you were all right. It's what a hero would do, right?" Rokuro told Izuku, making a bit of sense to the young boy. The only reason Izuku was even considering trusting this guy was because he didn't have a scar over his face like that other guy. "I work as a hero, so I can pretty easily get you home." Rock showed a hero license as he said this. It looked legitimate, just like the ID All Might showed off in his interviews. Izuku decided to trust Rock to lead him home. After a bit of time, Rock had led him home, his mother waiting for him by the front door, visibly distressed. The moment she saw Izuku, the tension left her body. She ran up to hug him, and only then did she notice Rock sitting off to the side. "Oh, I'm sorry, but who are you?" she asked the taller man, slight confusion at his presence. She was also starting to tense up again, something Rock couldn't allow. "Oh, my name is Rock. I saw that your son was lost earlier and helped him get home to you. You don't need to thank me, it's what a hero would do," Rock said in a cheerful manner, doing his absolute best to calm the mother down. "Thank you very much then, Mr. Rock," she said happily, tension leaving her body quickly. Rock felt relief at this. He wouldn't have to do any cleanup. With a wave goodbye, Rock went off in the opposite direction, his job done. For number 6, however, his job was only just beginning. "Doctor, I found the boy, Izuku Midoriya. He still lives in Mizudafu with his mother. Same apartment and everything." Number 6 told Kyudai Garaki over a burner phone. He always made sure not to leave a trace. "Excellent, good work as always. Number, continue with your previous directives as ordered. Don't mess up." The doctor commanded the speedster. "Understood, if it's data you want, it's data you'll have," Number 6 said with a smile on his face. He hung up the phone, grabbed a hold of the casing, then shattered it completely with a small explosion. A new briefcase filled with trigger was waiting for him at his feet. He bent over to pick it up, and with another usage of overclock, he was gone. Number 6 was back in Narahata before the sun had even set, his 3 mission parameters clear. His first mission was to spread trigger through the population and find more candidates for next-level villains, which he was already doing. His second mission was to continue to watch over Izuku Midoriya for the doctor. That one was simple enough, just routine inspections from a distance or brief interactions as Rock. His third mission, the one he was currently taking care of, was experimenting with his newfound abilities and reporting the data to the doctor. He liked this mission the most. All he had to do was give some random thugs some trigger and then he could fight them. Simple, easy, and fun. 3 things number 6 loved to say about a mission. A faint buzzing went past number 6's ear as B landed on his shoulder, breaking him out of his thoughts. Keen was nearby. Come on out, number 2, I'm not going to sweat you this time. Number 6 called out into the alleyway. Keen Hachisuka skipped down into the alleyway, humming a carefree tune. Oh come on, 6, is that any way to greet your sister? She asked. Despite her words, number 6 could feel the maliciousness oozing from her voice. Maybe it was because he knew her so well. They were all the doctor's children, after all. Speaking of the doctor's kids, number 1 took it upon himself to finally show up. Prim and proper, the living Black Mist was dressed up in a tailor-made suit. Still cordial too, if number 6's internal clock was right. Greetings, numbers 2 and 6, how are you two tonight? Shall we commence with the operation? Number 1 said in his ever-polite tone, no emotion shining through. Never any emotion shining through. I'm good. We gotta test out 6's upgrades on the doctor's orders. And please, you don't have to keep going with that number crap. Just call me Keen. Keen said, sharp teeth on display. Kurogyri warped them to a warehouse on the outskirts of Osaka, halfway across Japan in the blink of an eye. I gotta say, going fast is nice, but Demon, if you don't do some fine work, number as well, call me Rokuro while I have this face on, it's much easier. Rokuro told number 1 as well, not wanting the Misty Man to use his mouthful of a code name. The doctor sure did like his numbers. Understood, I will refer to you both as Keen and Rokuro from here on out. I request that you call me Kurogyri then as well. Kurogyri requested of the two, with Keen and Rokuro nodding their heads in response. Another warp gate opened up, courtesy of Kurogyri, and 2 people fell out, one new and the other familiar to Keen. The familiar one was the junkie villain, Chuma Yakamar. He was shaking in terror, peacefully sleeping in his holding cell until now. The other guy was a complete unknown, the only identifying detail being the gun barrels he had in place of fingers. On a quick probe of Kurogyri, he supplied that the man's name was simply Victor. I managed to grab the man with the bruiser quirk and a fellow with a ranged quirk. I will allow you to learn the specifics of the second one on your own. Kurogyri gently noted, tone still fixed and unwavering. Rokuro was starting to grin in sheer excitement. He knew what was coming next. Keen sent several of her bees at the 2 men, injecting them with trigger, others spreading out to record the ensuing fight for the doctor to witness later. Chuma bulked up immediately, skin turning a violent shade of red, and screamed out in rage, the warehouse shaking from his power. Victor's skin started to turn a sleek gray, 2 more sets of arms sprouting from his sides alongside 2 more pairs of eyes under his original 20 gun barrels and 4 eyes locked on to Rokuro. Rokuro just grinned in pure bliss. Now this will be a fight. Overclock activated, making the world almost appear to stop before Rokuro's eyes. The subtle shifting of Chuma's vocal cords, the way that the gunman's fingers started to flex, everything just fell into place. And Rokuro moved. Within a heartbeat, Rokuro had already crossed the distance between him and Chuma, sending his fist crashing directly into the giant's windpipe. His trachea closed instantly, now unable to breathe for the moment. The massive man was now unable to scream out and alert anyone, though he probably already had with his first roar. The gunman, now seeing Rokuro on top of his ally, opened fire upon him, bright red lights shining within the barrels on his fingers. It was just so DMN predictable. All Rokuro would have to do is lean to avoid the initial onslaught, then with overclock firing off, dodging the linear attacks wouldn't be an issue. The problem started when Rokuro couldn't activate overclock. The lasers ripped through his upper half in an instant, explosions blasting from the points of impact. Rokuro felt nothing but starbursts of pain flickering through his body. He got cocky and now he was paying the price. Alright, time limit, gotta adjust to that. Rokuro admonished himself in his head. A clock wouldn't have messed up like that, so he shouldn't either. With his mind preoccupied, Rokuro somehow didn't manage to catch Chuma getting back up, the big BSRD that he was. He certainly felt Chuma's massive fist connect with his back though, sending him crashing into one of the warehouse's support pillars. Regeneration finally kicked in, allowing Rokuro to start healing himself. Combining this with Bombify, Rokuro managed to heal himself faster and allow his bomber cells to grow, causing his right arm to start bloating. He was going to kill that gunman in one punch. Feeling overclock ready to go, Rokuro surged forwards, intent on splattering the gunman along the walls. He was not disappointed by the results. With a resounding thunderclap, Rokuro had reached his target, and with his right arm grabbing the gunman's face, activated self-detonate on his limb, obliterating his right arm completely. Crimson red coated the walls of the warehouse and Rokuro himself. The heat generated from the explosion felt soothing to Rokuro's wounds, almost like a heated blanket. The rush of combat filling his veins and the way his eyes started to fixate on his opponent in front of him. Fighting for the sake of fighting just felt right to Rokuro. The self-bomber felt good at this moment, a wide grin firmly on his face. He might have been missing an arm, but his opponent was missing his everything. Rokuro turned towards Chuma, raised his remaining left hand, and made a "come at me" motion with said limb. Chuma roared in anger at the challenge. Rokuro just activated overclock, his arm now regenerating in a fraction of the time it took beforehand, and he charged at Chuma. Overclock not only boosted his perception of time, but his speed as well. Bombify answered his call like an eager puppy, ready to spread more destruction. He allowed it to run wild. 6 punches, all in the blink of an eye. The instant each one connected, Rokuro blew up his limb, destroying the sections of his and Chuma's flesh every time he landed a punch. Each retraction of his arms was followed by regeneration, restoring the mangled limbs back to peak condition, the process sped up by overclock. Rokuro attacked like a well-oiled machine. He finally understood why the doctor had given him these specific quirks now. He was meant to destroy. And he would serve his purpose well. Chuma Yakimaru was on the floor, sections of flesh completely obliterated off of his body. He hadn't even gotten to throw a second punch. "Come on Rokuro, this is boring. At least let the guy hit you again." Keen shouted obnoxiously at the explosive fighter, gesturing towards Chuma's broken form. Chuma was infuriated at this. How dare they look down on him? He'd show them his full power. With all of the energy he could store within his shattered and abused body, Chuma let a colossal punch soar towards Rokuro, intent on turning the explosive man into a fine red mist. This punch completely leveled the entire warehouse, sending a massive shockwave outwards from the force generated. That punch would have killed almost anyone it hit in an instant. The problem was that it never fully hit Rokuro. "I see, so that's my current limit." The speedster spoke out from the dust cloud created by all the debris. Half of the skin on his left side was completely gone, his clothes torn to shreds alongside his flesh. He was already regenerating the portions of himself that he was missing, a massive blood-soaked smile on his face. "Thank you for helping me find my current limit, Mr. Bruiser. I'll never forget you for this." Rokuro calmly uttered before in a singular instant he was in Chuma's face, left hand extended outwards towards him. The moment his hand made contact, Chuma Yakimaru knew no more. Rokuro turned towards his 2 siblings, with a content smile on his face, joy radiating from his eyes. He was absolutely covered in blood, soaked head to toe. He was also still missing his left arm, nothing from his elbow downwards. "You needlessly endangered yourself by not being properly prepared. This shows poor oversight on your part." Kurojairi admonished Rokuro, monotonous tones droning on to Rokuro's ears. "You fought like an idiot. At least it was somewhat interesting. Put on a better show next time." Keen mocked him, which Rokuro didn't even bother entertaining. He had fun. So much fun. He wanted to fight over and over again. Just like this, until the day that he died. Is this how a clock felt every day? Rokuro asked himself deliriously, low on energy from his brief fight. He had to get used to fighting like that from now on. Rokuro then passed out, Kurojairi quickly warping over to catch him, making sure he didn't fall flat on his face. He would have the doctor check up on Rokuro, just in case. Keen skipped over to the 2 bees now flowing inside of her body. Job finished. Can we go now? I have school in the morning after all. Yes, we may. I wish you a wonderful night, Miss Keen. Kurogyari intoned politely, sending the remains of Chuma and Victor through the warp alongside himself and Rokuro. Keen went through her own gate home, giving Kurogyari a cheeky wave as she did so. With their final warps away, the group was finally gone, leaving behind a destroyed warehouse in Osaka and several bloodstains. Izuku woke up to headlines of a massive conflict in Osaka while scouring some hero forums in the morning. All that was reported in the area was screams, explosions, and the complete destruction of a random warehouse. There was nothing else to go off of in the pictures provided that captured the scene. Izuku was frustrated at the lack of information. Whoever was involved must have a powerful quirk. Izuku just wanted to know more, always craving more. He desired more. He would go about the rest of his day in moderate peace, writing down the various instant villains that kept popping up on the news. Maybe he could convince his mom to go down to Narahata for some reason or another. He just had to get more information. Izuku had managed to convince his mother to let him go down to Narahata under the pretense of getting more hero merchandise and notebooks. That wasn't all he was going to be getting, however. He wanted to analyze the latest Narahata vigilantes and instant villains in person. One quick train ride and he was finally there. Narahata, also dubbed the Vigilante Heaven. This was where Izuku was going to polish his analysis skills even further. Plus ultra, as All Might would say. He only needed to figure out exactly where the vigilantes were, simple enough. He opened up his phone and scrolled through all the local hero forums he was a part of and he'd find a match. Combing through all the numerous forums he was in took a bit, but soon he saw a ping pop up. A villain sighting, an instant villain, from the looks of things as well. Running down the busy main street, Izuku stumbled his way into an alleyway, and there he saw a terrifying sight. Blood everywhere, knives scattered around, and a singular masked man with a sword alongside a corpse. Izuku started retching from the view and smell. State yourself, boy. I have no time to play any games. The murderer spoke out. I'm Enoti telling why you am I na me. Izuku barely managed to stutter out through his unbridled fear. He wanted to run away. He needed to run away. Smart boy. Do you believe that I am wrong for doing this? The masked man asked with a backbone to his voice. He didn't sound angry, contemplative as he stared at Izuku. Izuku turned to run away, fight or flight completely in action. The masked man moved to stop him at the end of the alleyway. I am Stendhal. You have no conviction to stand for what you believe in. I judge that to be the ultimate sin. As the now-named Stendhal said this, he brandished his sword and knives once more, ready to end the young boy's life. I can't let you do that, Mr. Judgment. The boy is off limits. A young brown-haired woman with an eye patch announced into the alleyway from atop an AC unit. Where she had come from, Izuku didn't know. Was she watching that entire time? Do you believe that he is not committing evil, standing there and shaking while in the face of supposed evil? Should he not face judgment for his weakness? Stendhal proclaimed outwards, voice rising with the apparent need to enact his justice. I wouldn't care if you killed the kid or not, but someone else would. Someone you don't want to mess with. Remember that, Mr. Judgment. The girl promised Stendhal, her smile full of sharp teeth. Stendhal just sighed before sheathing his blades and jumping between the walls of the alleyway to escape. Izuku noted just how fast the man was, barely catching him in his gaze, tiredness and residual fear from his near-death experience shaking him to his core. Well then, now that all the drama is over, it's time for you to go night-night now. Sweet dreams, kid. The brown-haired girl said to Izuku with a wave and a cheeky grin. He heard a buzzing and then felt a sting. He passed out then and there, the drags having done their work. Oi, Rokuro, bring your butt out here and take care of the kid, you lazy bum. The girl said in mock indignation. Why can't you clean up after your pet serial killer, Keen? I'm not in the mood for this. Rokuro asked his sibling, exasperation rolling off of him in waves. The speedster quickly made it to Izuku's side and picked him up in a fireman's carry. Within minutes, the two were already halfway back to Mizudafu. Rokuro looked through the outside of the boy's apartment to see if there were any entrance points, and upon spotting a window, landed upon the outside sill. Once there, Rokuro quickly undid the latch, opened the window, and let himself and Izuku inside. Kid has a lot of hero merch, Rokuro thought with a sweat drop. He did spot one thing that surprised him, however, and a clock figurine, the genuine deal as well. Rokuro smiled widely at that, his opinion of the boy rising up immensely. At least the kid has good tastes. Rokuro mumbled to himself in genuine happiness. Setting the boy down on his bed, Rokuro decided to look around and see if there was anything interesting to be found. The kid went all the way to Narahata on his own. That was not normal of a boy his age. Seeing a stack of notebooks next to a computer, Rokuro started to flip through them while using overclock, breezing through the hundreds upon thousands of pages. He was very impressed by what he read. The doctor would be impressed as well. Rokuro then next went through the computer, analyzing every last detail, from the search history to even the serialization number of the model. Better to be extra thorough when the doctor was involved. The man did not appreciate failure of any kind. The boy started to stir after a while, the drags having worn off due to the low dosage. Upon opening his eyes and seeing Rock going through his notebooks and computer, he went to scream. Rokuro covered his mouth with his hand in a burst of speed. Don't scream. Don't yell. All right? I just helped you get away from a serial killer. You should be grateful. Rokuro calmly but firmly ordered. Izuku just nodded his head. Shock, panic, and anger were clear in his eyes. Izuku didn't know how to sort these emotions. This situation. The sheer unfairness of it all. Why did he have to be stuck here, with this maniac? Rock was not a good man. Not if he willingly broke into his apartment. But he did help save Izuku, if his words were to be taken as the truth. Izuku had no idea how to feel about the man. Should he feel anger at him for going through his stuff? Should he cry his heart out at the murder he just saw? Should he thank Rock for saving his life? Izuku didn't know what to do anymore. He just let it all out. I hate you. I hate Stendhal. I hate that brown-haired lady. I hate all of you, so much. The boy broke down as he spoke, words coming out between hoarse sobs and retches. Rokuro just stood there watching, never saying a word, just bearing witness. The boy was clearly hurting, which was fine by him. The doctor and all for one would prefer it this way. It made the boy more malleable. Just like him. I hate Bakugo. I hate the way people look at me. I hate being seen as a villain. Izuku was having a full mental breakdown now. As Rokuro was about to say something, the boy suddenly fell completely silent, no more tears shed, no more hiccups, and no more shaking. He looked dead to the world. For Izuku, he was hearing it again. The white noise. He had no idea why it sounded so familiar. He still didn't remember it. His soul did though. Izuku wasn't aware of anything happening to him, his limbs felt foreign and fuzzy. He couldn't move. He couldn't think. He couldn't breathe. A harsh smack rang out. Izuku was crying again, but he had clarity. Rock had just slapped him. But your life is Seekus, I get it, but are you going to do anything about it? Or are you just a loser? Rock asked him bluntly. His words hurt more than the slap did. The last word resonated with Izuku. He felt hatred for the man in front of him. It was primal, ugly, and deep. It festered, gnawing away at his rationality, and another part of him, something that felt older than himself, wanted to hurt this man. Izuku looked Rock dead in the eyes and uttered out two words. Two words that would seal his fate in this world. Fight me. Rokuro had transported the two swiftly to Dagoba Beach, leaving Izuku to land on his butt. This only infuriated the boy further. But maybe he'll use this and be better. Rokuro thought to himself upon seeing the boy's expression. Rule 1, always land on your feet. Rokuro instructed as he paced around the boy, his steps made him lurch forward like a panther, leaving no sound besides the crunch of sand. Izuku stood up at this, facing the older man defiantly. He wanted to win. For once in his life, he wanted to just win. Rule 2 - As Rokuro started his sentence, he got directly into Izuku's face, left fist buried deep into his gut. Never fight. A light explosion went off from Rokuro's hand. Not enough to grievously injure the boy, the doctor would kill him if he did that. Just enough to singe him a bit. Rokuro was not ready for the explosion to be shrugged off significantly easier than his punch and for the boy to then bite his nose, tearing part of it clean off. Rokuro staggered back from the boy and felt his face. His hand pulled back coated slick with his own blood, a smile blooming on his face. This kid is the right kind of crazy. Rokuro thought in pure delight. You get it. Finally. Someone else gets it. Rokuro shouted out in joy. How does your quirk work? You seem to resist explosions, is that all it does? Rokuro asked Izuku, blood now coating both of their teeth. I learned it. I get stronger. Izuku said breathlessly, his stomach still aching from the brutal punch he took earlier. Izuku noticed that the explosion singed his clothes, but surprisingly not his skin as much. His body was becoming more resistant over time. He was becoming stronger. Rule 3 - Rokuro was now behind Izuku, slamming his fist into the ground near the boy. Dodge! Rokuro ordered before detonating his hand. Izuku did not manage to dodge. The explosion lapped at his flesh, searing his skin and taking small pieces off. His adaptations weren't strong enough. He wasn't strong enough. Not yet, at least. Come on, kid, fight back. You already managed to do a bit of damage. Commit, or you'll die. You trying to quit on me? The older man said to the boy harshly. He held back his punches, but not his words. Can't, Izuku rasped out, his burns flaring up in pain. He could barely even breathe right now. How was he expected to fight? Quitting isn't very heroic, ain't it? Rokuro told him plainly. He was standing in front of Izuku now, staring down at him. Izuku hated that. He hated that this man was looking down on him. Izuku felt the presence in his mind again, but unlike the previous times, it felt firmer. More alive. It would be enough, it had to be. One punch. All Izuku wanted to do was land one punch. Rokuro extended a hand towards Izuku to pick him off of his feet. He never got the chance to pick him up when sand was tossed in his eyes. Izuku was on him like a rabid animal, teeth bared and fully coated in Rokuro's blood. He wasn't fighting for the sake of fighting, he wanted to kill. Rokuro could only smile when Izuku's right hook smashed into his jawbone. What he lacked in strength, he made up for in conviction. While Rokuro didn't get knocked off of his feet, he certainly did feel the punch. The kid had a mean right on him. He definitely didn't look like it, but he had a backbone to him. Rokuro liked that. You're fun, kid. Real fun. I can see it in your eyes. You fight like your life depends on it. You aren't strong yet, not by a long shot, but you'll grow if taught right. As Rokuro said this, Izuku finally fell to one knee, the exhaustion of the day fully getting to him. I want to train you. Every day, besides the occasional trip I have to take. Hero work and all that jazz. You get it, right? Rokuro asked the boy, blood staining his smile just like Izuku's. Izuku could only nod and then fall unconscious, completely spent. As Rokuro looked around at the trash surrounding them and then back at the boy, he knew what he just discovered was truly special. He would train the boy and prepare him for the doctor and all for one. If he was lucky, he might just survive his encounters with them. Hopefully, he'd gain something out of it all. He wasn't very lucky at all to be in this situation. Izuku was left in his bed, bandaged up and treated. He was also asleep, dreaming of exciting things. Exciting futures. He dreamt of looking down on the city of Mizudafu hovering in the clouds. He dreamt of going to UA, All Might's alma mater. He dreamt of being a hero. He dreamt of combat, of bloodshed, and of Stendhal. He dreamt of conviction. He dreamt that he could change the world. He dreamt that he was no longer weak. How right he would be. Stendhal had just purged a sinner from this world. He acted as an instrument of justice and struck the filth down. One down from his list of 4 that the villain gave to him. One day, his blade will carve into her flesh as well. He looked forward to that day. As Stendhal flicked his katana clean of blood, he took notice of a green-haired young boy. He was nearby, watching, so he must be seeped in evil himself. State yourself, boy. I have no time to play any games. Stendhal spoke assuredly. If the boy lacked conviction, he would just have to cull him. The boy proceeded to stutter out, not giving him his name, just wasting his time. At least he was smart enough not to give out his name. He wasn't smart enough to not be here though. Smart boy. Do you believe that I am wrong for doing this? Conviction poured out of Stendhal at this question. The boy turned to run away. A foolishly fatal mistake. Stendhal ran quickly to cut the boy off, placing him between his exit and the corpse still in the alleyway. The boy was shaking in fear. Shaking in weakness. Stendhal would not stand for cowardice of this nature. For a lack of conviction. I am Stendhal. You have no conviction to stand for what you believe in. I judge that to be the ultimate sin. Stendhal announced his judgment, blade poised to purge one more seed of evil from this world. I can't let you do that, Mr. Judgment. The boy is off limits. Keen Hachisuka stopped Stendhal. She stopped his hunt. Do you believe that he is not committing evil, standing there and shaking while in the face of supposed evil? Should he not face judgment for his weakness? Stendhal intoned to the monster he had allied himself with. I wouldn't care if you killed the kid or not, but someone else would. Someone you don't want to mess with. Remember that, Mr. Judgment. Keen informed him, her sharp smile on display. The mysterious benefactor. Stendhal had his suspicions, but he'd trust his instincts. Those instincts were telling him that if he struck the kid down that his punishment would be worse than death. His crusade could not continue if he was dead. He would not allow that. Stendhal sheathed his sword, picked up his knives, and jumped along the sides of the buildings to escape unseen. He'd be leaving the boy to Keen. Let her do what she wants. He would hunt. Stendhal didn't know where it all went wrong. He was supposed to have already killed his remaining 3 targets on his list. He was supposed to succeed and fulfill his purpose. The other vigilantes stopped him from enacting justice. Crawler and Knuckleduster in particular. Crawler had dragged away evil, and thus stained his own soul with said evil. It was a shame as well. Stendhal quite liked his heroic spirit. Unfortunately, he must die for Stendhal's mission. Justice falls upon everyone after all. Stendhal was not expecting Knuckleduster to come save Crawler and the villain though. He also wasn't expecting the man to break down the range dynamics between their fighting styles and how he could counter Stendhal. Then the BSTRD threw out a line of cord. His exact range, he called it. If you step past this line, I'll knock your block off and send you into next week. The grisly mountain of a man told him. Stendhal could not back off. He would not back off. So he pushed forward, planning to cut the man's head clean off of his shoulders. Then the BSTRD crossed the line himself and broke Stendhal's nose completely, breaking his mask as well. Never said I wouldn't cross the line myself, you B-rate slasher. Knuckleduster spoke out, making a mockery of Stendhal. No, not Stendhal. Stendhal was dead. A broken fragment of conviction and ideals. In his place now was only a Stain. In a flurry of rabid attacks, Stain managed to nick Knuckleduster with one of his knives, securing a bit of his blood. Using this opportunity, he activated Blood Curdle in order to paralyze the significantly stronger man, letting him escape. Stain stumbled into his apartment, mask shattered, nose broken, and with facial fractures. He was dripping blood across the floor with every step, vision blurring with his loss of blood. He had never felt more alive. Knuckleduster had stopped him from killing a target on his list. Stain had gained so much more than another sinner's head though. He gained clarity, purpose, true conviction. He was no longer Stendhal, not anymore. Stendhal was a mask, a fake. Now he would only become stained. Stained with the blood of fakes and frauds. Stain, the hero killer. That was his new purpose. He just now needed to prove it to himself. You know, you're finally starting to get interesting, Mr. Judgment. I wonder what you'll do, Keen started, only to get a knife thrown into her eye-patched eye hole. Silence! Stain commanded as he stared at the mirror, the cracked and broken mirror, just like the world around him. The cracks formed fractals that never reflected back Stain's nose. He knew what would send the message of his commitment. What would break him from this cycle of masks and fakes? Stain used his serrated butterfly knife to carve his nose completely off of his face, No pain medication or supplies. A permanent deformation and scar. A mark of commitment to his crusade. Proof of his very conviction. Blood poured into his sink from his self-mutilation. He was no longer Stendhal. No longer Kaizome Akaguro. He was Stain now and forevermore. I know that a girl needs her beauty sleep, but you don't need to bring pointy objects into things. Keen told the serial killer, taking the knife out of her socket with a sickening squelch, bees and their fluids completely coating the blade. Stain turned to her and uttered out a singular order. I need power and you are to provide it. Be glad that I have no issue with you currently, or a second knife would be sure to follow the first, preferably in your functional eye. Keen just hummed a tune to herself, whipped out her phone, and started to text someone. Stain was quickly growing furious with her. She dares to mock his crusade? A black misty portal opened next to Keen, and upon her insistence, he stepped through. He was armed and she was not. Ah, Mr. Stendhal, I would say it's a pleasure to meet you, but I don't care for you in any capacity. I'm Kyudai Garaki, but most refer to me as the doctor. Kyudai Garaki told the serial killer who just walked through Kurogiri's portal. He wasn't worried though, he had his children around after all. The serial killer couldn't possibly fight off Hood and survive. My name is now Stain. I desire power. You will give it to me, yes? Stain talked to the doctor as if he owed Stain. It wasn't every day that materials offered themselves up on a silver platter though. Especially not of Stain's quality. Kyudai Garaki just smiled and nodded his head. This Stain. I believe that I will give it to you. The doctor looked at one of his side monitors, showing his progress in copying quirks using Izuku's DNA as a template. It showed a 99% success rate. A second monitor showed Vlad King fighting an instant villain, collecting valuable data. An idea sprung in the doctor's mind. Oh yes, I definitely shall. Izuku kept training with rock, pouring blood, sweat, and tears into every exercise the older man put him through. At one point, the hero had even told him his name. Rokuro Nomura. Izuku didn't know if that was his real name or not, but he'd continue to call the man by it. He didn't really see any good alternatives. Just like how he didn't see the uppercut Rokuro sent at him in his daydreaming. The large explosion that hit Izuku afterwards did not do any significant damage despite the size. He'd certainly built his resistance up over the years. Keep your head in the game or I'll happily take it off. Rokuro told him with a sharp grin, the vicious taskmaster that he was. I'd like to see you try. Izuku roared back defiantly, kicking up sand at Rokuro to hide his next movements from the speedster. With a burst of speed, Izuku was now behind the older man, planning to land a brutal punch to his opponent's kidney. Rokuro just detonated his back to try and blast Izuku away. That didn't deter the younger man at all, it only spurred him further to finish his punch. To strike. The blow took Rokuro down to his knees, vision blurring briefly from the punch before regeneration brought him back from the brink. Rokuro got up, brushed himself off, and blurred in front of Izuku with overclock, intent on slamming him completely into the sand below. As soon as he had his opponent in his grip, however, he realized something. The BSTRD wouldn't let go. He was now caught in a slugging match, one arm down and his speed advantage gone. His opponent was only slightly smaller than himself nowadays, their training having shown in terms of muscle growth. That training was now about to kick Rokuro's butt. 3 solid punches connected with Rokuro's face, then 2 into his throat and sternum. Blood was spat into his eyes and nails carved into his flesh. His trainee was fighting dirty. Good, he learned. Well, Rokuro finally decided to stop playing around then. If his student was good enough, he'd survive. A solid headbutt crashed into Izuku's temple, allowing Rokuro to escape the hold he had. Then the fireworks started, as Rokuro's arms started to bloat with his bomber cells. He was going to detonate. Izuku just smiled widely. He was so happy to be taken seriously. He charged inwards, towards the explosion. Rokuro will be slightly weaker, and I can handle it. I'm going to win. Izuku thought to himself, focused purely on his objective. On victory. The explosion completely decimated the nearest trash heap they were fighting by. Garbage turned to slag and ash. Izuku just ran into it, feeling the heat burning away at his flesh. The flames liking away and lightly singing his hair. The sound making his entire body tremble. The glorious noises of combat. He was ecstatic. "Grit those teeth, Rokuro!" The young man screamed out at his mentor, adrenaline pumping through his body. His punch connected soundly with Rokuro's jaw, teeth clacking together and bones dislocating. His momentum drove him hard into the now crystallized glass under his feet, glass shards also now digging into his face. Izuku started breathing hard, feeling the air not fully enter his lungs. He did it. He won for the first time ever. After 4 long years, victory was his. Izuku leaned his head back, ragged pants coming from his mouth. He ignored the shattered glass digging into his burnt and marred skin, the bone-deep fatigue, and even the way that his body screamed in protest at every movement. He roared out his victory into the sky, voice heard over the entire beach coastline. Clapping could be heard nearby, a misty man watching over the two. Kurogiri, he said his name was. Rokuro introduced them as his brother. Izuku didn't buy that for a minute, but he wouldn't ask questions. "Congratulations on your victory, young Midoriya. It was hard-earned, but it is your own. Do you desire refreshments? I have water and food with me." Kurogiri intoned in his emotionless way, still polite, but just off-sounding to Izuku. The young man just nodded his head and reached forwards, a warp gate with some sandwiches and a cold water bottle falling into his hands. "What? Nothing for me? I just got my butt kicked, some good big brother you are." Rokuro called out from the small crater of glass he was in. The older man started to drag himself out, glass shards falling off of his skin from his regeneration activating. Blood was dripping off of him from all his cuts. He looked like someone stabbed a bottomless blood bag several times. It's a good look on him. Definitely suits the jackass. Izuku thought to himself, absolutely exhausted from their spar. "Do you have an off switch? You just don't stay down." Izuku asked his mentor, tiredness seeping into his tone. He had no mood for his teacher's shenanigans. "Come on, can't a man joke around with his brother? It's the little brother's job to be annoying, right, Kuro?" Rokuro pleaded to his sibling, tone dripping with false innocence. "I believe that young Midoriya is correct that you should have an off switch. You have a scheduled patrol in Narahata soon after all." Kurogiri told his brother, tone blunt. Rokuro's eyes widened. It was that time, wasn't it? He had to make plans to finally deal with his problem. "Oh yes, that. All right, warp me over to my place, I'll be done in a flash. Kid, make sure that you come here sharp tomorrow, all right? No slacking off just because you finally won." Rokuro told his pupil, pride shining in his eyes being masked by his teasing tone of voice. He was proud of him, what more could he say? 1 to 1049 wasn't too bad, right? He wouldn't ever let his mentee know that though. He didn't want him to get a big head. He didn't want to admit he got attached. "What will you do with the rest of your day, young Midoriya?" Kurogiri asked Izuku. He couldn't tell if the man truly sounded curious or not. He didn't really do the whole emotion thing whenever he talked. "Probably just bandage myself up and spend time at my house. Nothing too big." Izuku told Kurogiri, a bright smile still on his face. "Would you like a warp gate home then?" Kurogiri calmly asked. "I think that I'm good, I kind of like the run home. It's a good cool-down run." Izuku replied. "Understood then. Have a wonderful day then, and congratulations once again on your victory." Kurogiri stated before warping himself away. Now left alone with his thoughts, Izuku would start his jog back home, energy coursing through him at his victory. His first win. He felt amazing, like he was on top of the world. It was a shame that this feeling wouldn't last. A loud crash rang out and an explosion eclipsed Izuku's form. Unlike training, however, this was in his home. Everything was burning around Izuku. He didn't know what was happening. Why was this happening? "Izuku, is that you, honey?" His mother called out to him. She was trapped under some burning rubble. "Mom, I'll get you out of here, I promise. Just hang on, please." Izuku pleaded with his mother, tears in his eyes. "All for one. I'm going to kill you." A voice rang out, a familiar one. "All Might. All Might, please help my mom. All Might. Izuku screamed out, voice starting to turn hoarse from the smoke he was inhaling. The hero turned to him, and before he could even step forwards, the villain attacked once more. Rubble fell upon them as lasers poured from the villain's fingers. They were trapped in here, among the fire and smoke. No one to save them. No one to save his mother. Izuku screamed out in denial and anger, tears streaming down his face, evaporating as they hit the floor. He tried to grab at the debris and rubble, burning his hands from the heat and scratching his palms. He didn't care, he just needed to get her out, he just needed her to be free. He found her hand under the remaining rubble, he just had to pull her out. She would be out and they could spend time together again. He just had to get rid of the last of the rubble and she'd be out. He couldn't find the rest of her. There was ashes and bone left, only her hand remained in his own. Izuku cried, standing there in the smoke, ash and rubble. His mother was gone. Torn away from him. One of the remaining lights in his world was extinguished. Despite the flames and smoke lapping at his flesh, he felt cold and hollow. He wasn't enough. A tornado of pure force slammed the rubble away, and Izuku Midoriya knew no more. Toshinori Yagi, the All Might, had finally caught up to his fated foe, his nemesis, All for One. He would kill the man today. Why the BSTRD was in a residential area didn't matter. All Might already had everyone evacuated, he'd made sure of it himself. How wrong he was to think that. He caught sight of the demon, standing in the sky and looking through buildings before he eventually landed near the front door. All Might wouldn't let that happen. He was on the monster before anyone could even blink, his fist exploding out with righteousness. The building exploded, probably from a busted gas pipeline. Standing amidst the flames and debris, All for One got right back up, skin already healing from one of his many quirks. All Might gritted his teeth and prepared to charge at his adversary. All for One. I'm going to kill you. The hero roared out, ready to end All for One once and for all. All Might, please help my mom. All Might. A voice yelled out. A small boy, and clearly his mother as well, if he was meant to be believed. Before he could turn to help, All for One fired lasers out of his fingers, collapsing more rubble on top of the boy. My apologies, All Might, it appears that my fingers must have slipped. I was aiming finger beams at you, truly? All for One called out. All Might's blood was boiling in rage. A snarl coming over his face, teeth bared. All for One will die here. He promised on his very life. All for One stuck out his hand, bone-like growths forming and skewered where All Might previously stood. Rivet stab, and spear-like bones. He called out. All Might positioned himself to launch at his foe with a brutal corkscrew punch, intent on killing the man. Virginia Smash. Hardening, ×3. Durability Enhancer, ×2. All for One called out in response, catching All Might's punch firmly. His other hand started to turn crystalline and started to steam, cracks forming alongside the steam venting. Crystal lattice, string theory, and steam vent. He called out once more. Then there was heat and light. Shards of crystals poured out alongside steamy wisps of string, cutting into flesh and scalding. The strings bit into All Might's skin and held him in place. This attack wasn't meant to kill, it was meant to distract and bind. Burn up, heat conversion, body heat to strength, temperature shock, heat resistance ×4. The villain called out, arm glowing white from pure heat. Before he could strike All Might with the limb, however, the hero headbutt him, rage storming in his gaze alongside the cry of his attack. Philadelphia Smash. All for One now had blood pouring down his face from a broken nose and shattered teeth. He was snarling now himself. It was time to remove the kid gloves. Before he knew it, a massive limb drove through the back of All Might's stomach and lower left lung. Blood cascading down to the floor around him. Mirror step. Spring-like limbs. Proliferation. Rivet stab. Spear-like bones. Kinetic booster, ×4. Strength enhancer, ×3. How do you like this quirk combination, All Might? All for One asked his nemesis as he was writhing on the ground, entrails in the open air. He looked so pitiful. So weak. How he managed to get his brother's quirk, he had no idea, but he'd have to finish him off here. He might have wanted his brother back, but not at the risk of his own life. All Might managed to surprise him though. The madman sprinted at him, organs falling out as he lunged towards All for One, the shock making him take a split second longer than usual to call up on any quirks he possessed. United States of Smash. That split second cost him his head, quite literally, as a matter of fact. His skull being crushed into a mushy paste by the smiling oaf. All Might didn't stop at one punch though, he kept going, smearing All for One's brain matter everywhere. The monster's head was now reminiscent of a crushed grape. The vicious blows All Might had landed created fissures in the earth and tornadoes in the sky. He had changed the very landscape with his attack. Rain started to fall from the clouds that had now formed, washing away the blood, flames, and smoke. The final thoughts on All Might's mind was of the sweet revenge he finally got for his master. The boy from earlier and his mother unfortunately slipped his mind in the chaos. How unfortunate indeed. No one noticed All for One's corpse vanishing through a thick black sludge, which also washed away in the rain. Kyudai Garaki was scrambling to save his master's life. His skull wasn't even there anymore. Putting him in the vat used for the recent Nomu project seemed to be working. Nutrients started to fill in with liquid, jump-starting his healing process. He was flatlining again though. Garaki needed a solution. But what could work? What could possibly save his master? The blank DNA. Of course, I could use it to synthesize a stronger regeneration quirk. Kurogyri. The doctor shouted out, alerting Kurogyri. The misty man warped the samples of the blank DNA to the doctor, who added in regeneration-type quirks to create a stronger variant. If this didn't work, his master would die. Garaki could not allow that by any means. The synthesizer took several hours to create the quirk, only made possible from how similar the base components were. The entire time, Garaki worked tirelessly to make sure his master's body wouldn't start failing completely. The quirks his master possessed made the process barely functional. He truly was a monster. The newly dubbed Super Regeneration quirk was now made, with Garaki quickly forcing it into his master's system. He waited with bated breath. The only noise in the background was the gurgling of the nutrient tank and the flat line of the heart monitor All for One was hooked up to. For several minutes, that was all the doctor heard. His master was gone. The doctor was about to pull the plug on the entire operation before he heard it. A faint gasp in the tank. He slowly craned his neck to look up at him, mouth opening in shock and awe. Scar tissue completely coated the top of his master's head. He no longer had eyes, ears, or a nose. He was alive though. He would still continue to drive terror in the hearts of heroes and villains. All for One would never die. Izuku woke up. He didn't know where he was or what was happening. Panic seized his heart. His mother, where was she? Was it all just a nightmare? He was begging for it all to have just been some horrific nightmare. The beep of the heart monitor and the searing pain in his muscles dissuaded him of that notion. It had to have been real. She was really gone. He'd failed her. A hero shouldn't ever fail. Izuku started crying, ugly harsh sobs tearing themselves free from his throat. His tears were fat, bloated with grief and rage. He didn't know how long he cried for, he didn't care. He just wanted out of this hell he was ensnared in. Izuku Midoriya, how you always end up in my office, I'll never know. Please, face forward. A familiar voice rang out. Dr. Tsubasa. Dr. Izuku started. Garaki. Kyudai Garaki. I am not, Tsubasa. I have no need to hide from you. The medical professional harshly cut him off. This confused Izuku greatly. Wasn't this the same man who had been treating him for years? He was the same portly bushy-mustached man on closer inspection. Why was he going by a different name? We have to work out what to do with you now. You have seen things that you shouldn't have. But there are also eyes on you. The doctor continued on, rambling as he paced the room. Izuku's fight-or-flight response was blaring at this point. He needed to escape. He needed to get away or fight the man in front of him. He had to move. The moment Izuku went to lunge forwards, a familiar purple mist opened in front of him, and with it, an unfamiliar gloved hand. The hand grabbed Izuku by his throat and slammed him into the floor, a hooded figure moving out from the mist with the movement. Hood, it's all right, we could actually use this opportunity. Let the boy get back up. We can run an experiment, right here and now. The doctor told the hooded figure, now known to Izuku as Hood. Hood tossed Izuku back towards the bed he was just laying in, face completely blank and unmoving. The man was like a statue given human form. Pretty creative name. What's next? You have a one-eyed man you call Cyclops? Izuku snarked as he braced himself to attack Hood. No, we currently don't have anyone named that in our employ, but potentially soon we might. There's always room for more data. The doctor said bluntly, whether to mock or just due to disinterest, Izuku didn't know. Come on, fight me, punk, just know that I pack a mean left. Hood stated firmly. The man sounded like he smoked an entire pack every day since he was born. Izuku charged forward, intent on sucker-punching the man and trying to escape afterwards, just like Rokuro taught him to. This plan fell apart when Hood started to throw his left hand forwards, joints bending as if they were made of rubber, and used his limb to whip at Izuku. The surprise allowed the man to barely clip Izuku across the face, nearly knocking him to the ground. Hood was right, he really did have a mean left punch. I got some fun upgrades from the doc over here. Get back up, keep fighting and keep bleeding. If you don't, I'll just beat you to death. You'd be too boring to keep around. Hood said plainly. Izuku could tell that if he didn't do something fast that Hood would kill him. Izuku grabbed at the nearby heart monitor and threw it at Hood, trying his best to distract his opponent. When Hood went to raise an arm to destroy the machine, Izuku sprung his trap. He rushed forwards and struck the larger man between his legs. Never fight fairly, the first real lesson Izuku learned. Hood fell to his knees, groaning in pain at the treatment he had just received. Izuku felt no sympathy for the man, he'd happily hurt him again without a second of hesitation. Izuku used this opportunity to try and slam a heel kick into the man's jawbone, intent on fully knocking him unconscious. Hood merely leaned his head downwards, taking the hit to his cheek instead of his jaw. He wasn't knocked out, but at least he was even more injured. Hood grasped Izuku's extended leg, squeezed the limb painfully, and threw him directly through a misty portal that Kurogyari had made. The roaring waves of Dagoba Beach sounded around him on the other side. The doctor, Kurogyari, and Hood followed after him through the same portal. He was surrounded. So you can hit well, nice to know that. Maybe you'll be worth a fight after all. Hood said while cracking his neck. Blood was rushing throughout his body, adrenaline surging, and neurons firing in pure joy. Someone that finally wouldn't go down in a single punch and that would actually fight back. Hood was in nirvana. Izuku was scrambling to regain his footing. The pressure on his foot hurt significantly more than he thought it would. Hood was way stronger than he should have been. He had muscle mass, but not enough to cause bone-deep pain with grip strength alone. He had to have an enhancement quirk of some kind. What's your quirk? Izuku asked, hoping that maybe his opponent was cocky enough to tell him. Which one do you want to know about? Hood retorted. This threw Izuku completely for a loop. Multiple quirks? How does this man have multiple of them? Why wasn't his body breaking down from the strain? What do you mean by that? Izuku asked for clarification. I mean that I have multiple quirks. Get the wax out of your ears if you can't handle getting a response. Hood said mockingly. What quirks do you have? Izuku asked. Dr. Garaki actually piped up at this, imparting some wisdom onto Izuku as he did so. Hood possesses 3 quirks currently. I will only tell you about one of them though. Transforming arms. Try and figure out that one. Think of it as a training exercise. Hood, keep fighting solely with that quirk. I want good combat data. This sent Izuku on an analysis spree, as that proved Hood's whip-like appendages were a singular quirk instead of an adaptation. All he had to do now was find out the limits of Hood's abilities and he might be able to beat the man. Hood noticed the look in Izuku's eyes, the way his opponent was scanning and breaking down every facet of his entire being. It was invigorating, knowing he was the entire focus of another living being. Knowing that every tangible portion of their lives led up to this fight. That here and now, both of them existed to fight at this singular moment. That this was their purpose. Izuku had started subtly shifting away from Hood, intent on gaining some form of advantage. He found it when his foot lightly nicked a shard of broken glass buried within the sand. That should hopefully do the trick. Izuku acted as if he rolled his foot, dropped into the sand, and picked up a handful of the sand alongside the broken glass, scraping his fingers and palm as he did so. Hood approached Izuku slowly, as if he was stalking his prey. In a way, he was as his footsteps sent. Tremors through Izuku's body and mind, fear almost paralyzing him in place. Once he got within 4 or 5 more steps in Izuku's range, the next trap was sprung. Sand flew into Hood's face, with him unable to shield himself in time. The glass shards that were mixed in with the sand managed to pierce into his left eye, sinking into the soft flesh. The sand mixed together with his and Izuku's blood, making a thick brown goop that stained his face. He was blinded in more ways than one. Instead of falling over in pain though, the man started to laugh. Hood's entire body shook in his laughter. He leaned into every outburst and his head knocked backwards fully whenever he needed to breathe. The man was completely manic in his movements, shaking like a rabid animal. Kurogyari and the doctor didn't seem fazed in the slightest at this, but Izuku was barely hanging on to his own sanity. He felt like a flayed thread about to snap and break. The large man glared at Izuku with his remaining eye and tore off the right-hand sleeve of his hoodie, showing off a segmented pattern on his arm. This pattern would then begin to open up, airflow visible from the ports on his skin. "You wanna get wicked?" Hood screamed outwards, and within a blink, the man was already on top of Izuku. He grabbed the entirety of Izuku's face and dragged his whole body through the sand, a massive trench left in their wake. Upon reaching the end of the man-made trench, Hood threw Izuku into the air. Sand and debris briefly floated in the air alongside him. Leaping up after his quarry, Hood grabbed a hold of Izuku's ankle and bodily slammed him back into the sand below. Izuku landed back first, spittle falling freely from his mouth. Hood then landed directly on top of him, a kick planted firmly into his stomach, causing the sand beneath him to plume upwards from the force and form a crater around the two. "Come on. You can get back up. Fight me, keep fighting me until one of us drops dead. Let's kill each other, Izuku Midoriya." Hood bellowed outwards. Izuku could only weakly gasp from the pain and pressure. Hood was too strong, too overwhelming, and even more brutal than Izuku in a fight. He tried grasping at the long-sleeved pants of the man above him, hopefully making him stop, even for just a moment. He had to do something, and fast. Hood stopped putting his body weight on Izuku once he felt the younger man pull on his pant leg, and upon further inspection, noticed he was trying to say something. Stepping off of his opponent, he leaned closely in order to hear what Izuku was trying to say. The moment he was close enough, however, Izuku spat blood into his remaining eye and lunged to bite at his throat. Izuku's teeth sliced through Hood's neck like a hot knife through butter. Izuku felt a flood of blood rush into his mouth from Hood's torn airway. The taste of copper and the coating of blood on his tongue caused Izuku to GG and nearly puke. Hood wasn't faring any better, clutching at the hole, gushing his blood like a broken faucet. The man wasn't angry, not in the slightest, if the garbled and choked laughter Izuku could hear from him was what it seemed. On a second look, Izuku could see a large grin set upon the other man's face. He really was an animal. "Hood, you may use another one of your quirks. Heal yourself," Garaki ordered blandly. Upon hearing the order, Hood's torn open throat started to rapidly patch itself up, muscles stitching together like a grotesque spool of yarn, skin closing over the previously gaping wound. He plucked his torn-apart eyeball from the socket. A new one started growing in its place, albeit a bit more slowly than his throat. Izuku could only stare in horror. This is what a truly powerful opponent looked like. What Rokuro spent his time preparing Izuku for. Upon thoughts of Rokuro, however, Izuku was led down a dangerous realization. Wait, Kurogyari was here, and he was Rokuro's brother. Did he help orchestrate this? Was he in on it all? Was he the reason that I'm about to die here? His mind wouldn't supply him any answers, as his grip on his mind slipped away, consciousness fading alongside it. "Hood, you're done. We collected our data." Kurogyari, take Izuku with us, we are leaving. Dr. Garaki ordered once more. Hood visibly bristled at the order, but the moment he turned to argue, Kurogyri had started warping them all away. Dagoba Beach's coastline was now covered in deep trenches of sand, craters, and numerous piles of shattered trash. Despite the damage, however, no one investigated, as Dagoba was too far away from anyone that would have cared to call the police about any potential noise. Green. Nothing but green. Murky and deep, with luminescent hues. Izuku could barely even open his eyes, but he could make out that much. Every movement caused immense discomfort, from the itching underneath his skin to the viscosity of the fluids surrounding him. He could feel wires snaking their way through his skin and veins. He didn't enjoy that in any capacity. Morning, sunshine, we've been waiting for you to finally wake up. A familiar voice rang out. Hood, it had to be. There was no mistaking his voice for anyone else's. Even though Izuku couldn't see very well, he could still make out Hood's left hand placed firmly against the glass of the tank he was stuck in. The hand looked tense, and if Izuku wasn't mistaken, slightly misshapen, but that could just be the blurry vision or a concussion playing tricks on his mind. Come on, don't just ignore your good ol' pal. You gave me a good fight, damaged my eye, ripped out my throat, and fought to death's door. That means something to me. Hood said, mania tinging his tone towards the end. Izuku could feel a shiver pass through his body, and it wasn't just due to the cold fluid surrounding him. The man clearly had something wrong with him, and Izuku wanted no part in any of it. He tried to move his limbs, but every cell in his body screamed at him that he shouldn't even bother trying. It was just causing him even more pain. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend moving. I want you all well and good for our rematch. Just rest up, heal, and get stronger, then we can fight. Not a moment before. You understand? Hood said, tone radiating a sickening aura of malice and bloodlust that washed over Izuku's tank. Izuku shivered once more, an action that Hood seemed to have noticed as well. All Izuku heard after that was the large man's footsteps fading into the distance. He was left alone again. Just him and his thoughts, the background noise of bubbling liquid, and electronic beeping not dissuading his need to sleep once more. A dreamless rest would then claim Izuku Midoriya. Hood was staring at his left hand, missing portions of flesh and not healing properly from the beatdown Rokuro gave him. The man had slipped his bomber cells into Hood's hand after he blew it clean off with an initial explosion, and now it wasn't healing properly. Hood wanted to kill the other man, but he'd have to plan it wisely. Garaki wouldn't help, not interested in getting between his children's playtime, as he so eloquently put it. Brother, or not, Hood was going to crush his skull like a grape. He just had to convince his father to give him a gift. He was patient enough, he'd bide his time. Rokuro would die by his hand. He just now had to find a way to stop these cells from interrupting his regeneration quirk from activating. He didn't want to allow Rokuro to keep this advantage, and if he just ripped the limb off, he couldn't experiment. He might not have been the most intelligent of the doctor's kids, but he was smart enough in his own right. Soon. First, getting over this setback, then my rematch with Rokuro and his student. I won't just win, I'll eviscerate them. Hood mumbled to himself. Insanity completely overtook him for a brief moment before he clamped down harshly on his sanity. He couldn't be reckless, not when proving his superiority. He'd bide his time and strike when the time was right. Strike first, strike ruthlessly, and secure the kill. Those were the rules he learned in the fighting pits. That was his life. The only one worth living. The only true life to Hood.